Well, CM Punk selling the Hell in a Cell in a big way, Chris. I don't know. I mean, I was gonna say I don't care, but I kind of care if he was like that beat up or not. But it doesn't matter in the sense that whether a lot of that was a guy in his mid 40s, who hasn't wrestled a lot, feeling the effects of what was a worked simulated fight that involved a lot of genuine physical, high impact. Uh, Pain-inducing bumps and falls. I love it. You know, the announcers are very almost heavy-handed in talking about the Hell in a Cell being career-ending or career-altering, but you don't always see the follow-up to make those words feel like they carry credible weight because they don't really talk about it sometimes until it's the next time around when they want to sell you on it. This was a really good follow-up. They could have just had Punk disappear for a while and come back when they're ready for the next thing with him. You know, I don't know how long he'll be out. Don't want to know, surprise me, but they brought him out and I thought it was nice for the crowd that paid to see him, but mostly it was a way to give closure to a feud that had been going on for, 9 months roughly, and sold the Hell in a Cell as something that really, really hurts. No real mention to Drew McIntyre at all either, by the way, which is interesting. But I wanted to lead with that because I think that's sometimes wrestling promoters turn the page once they've, quote, made their money on something, and there isn't that follow-up to reinforce if you missed it, you missed something super brutal and important, you should go watch it. And that's what that did, and I think it helps to sell the next Hell in a Cell. Chris, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that these matches are brutal. They're supposed to be brutal. You're supposed to show the after effects of that. CM Punk giving could this be a retirement speech? Could this be I don't know what my future holds speech? I thought was really good to sell the after effects. No side of Drew McIntyre. No, oh, I brushed it off. It's I know I bled a lot on Saturday, but I'm okay now on Monday. And I think really what WWE really stresses, this match being a great example of it, but even other matches on the show, the matches are important. The results are important. The after effects are important. And I think I'm hopeful that this is after many years of going away from that this is now a way to go for the future. Show that they build up these big matches. The results are important, and there needs to be a break sometimes because the matches can be very brutal.
Do you think Punk looking that beat up and making it sound like that might be it for him? He said he had 0 Hell in a Cell matches left. He was right. I'm going to go home to be with my wife. He didn't retire, but he's like, made it almost sound like he's thinking about not doing this anymore. And obviously I don't think most people don't think that, but does that play into the idea that he's old and, maybe Brittle's overstating it, but, had some injuries that caused him to miss a lot of ring time since his return? Is it, I just praised everything, and I think my answer to this question is it's still worth it, but there's a little bit of a side effect, which is people are like, God, Punk can't hack this anymore, can he? Especially if there's no mention of how Drew is doing in the shape that he's in.
I think the best utilization of CM Punk at this point of his career with his injury history is to be a person that maybe only has several big matches over the course of the year. I think this is a great way of selling that. I think he was so invested in wrestling Drew. It drained so much out of him for this long period of time, and he was obviously in this brutal match. He needs time to regroup. It would be kind of, I was hoping he wasn't going to come out and say, well, I want to challenge the winner of Gunther Sami Zayn next week, because it wouldn't have put the amount of time he put into this feud in the right perspective. So, yeah, I think he is old and brittle, and I think that's part of it too. But also Drew McIntyre, who's not as old and not as brittle, is also not on. And I think that helps sell just the gravity of the match and the importance of the result, and as well as the brutality of it.
I think it's worth selling Hell in a Cell to have the side effect of Punk playing into the perception that he can't handle this. And frankly, people know he's got gray hair and he's in his mid-40s, and part of his gimmick might just realistically be, does he have one more title run in him? Does he have one more title shot? Can he earn one more title shot? He's going to talk a big game, but, we're still on a journey with Punk in terms of what is his place right now in WWE in 2024 going into 2025? You know, I mean, should he stick with I'm the best in the world, or do you enter a different chapter? They're already telling the AJ story style, the AJ style story, which is, you know, he's up there, and there's some question about if he's really hurt or not. I think WWE's just selling it convincingly, but maybe it was an unhappy accident that they wanted to sell his injury on SmackDown, but also he did get hurt. I mean, WWE's playing it up. But either way, I don't think they want to tell both of those stories at once, even though they're like, within a year or so of each other's age. AJ has a lot more wear and tear, but Punk did MMA, and, sometimes time away can make you more prone to injury. So I'm curious, where they go with this. When Punk comes back, however long it is, does he come back and just look ready to go and totally healthy? Or do they play up even more the idea that, it's every match he has is a challenge now, and it's tough, and it's getting tougher. I'm not sure what the right answer is to that, but if fans see him as we saw it with Aaron Rodgers on Sunday. Sorry, Chris. I know we agreed not to talk about this as a Jets
It's okay.
fan.
It's all right.
It came very naturally.
Okay.
They're talking about Aaron Rodgers. At age 40, like after getting sacked, it's harder to stand up. And they talked about Aaron Rodgers coming to grips with the idea that, it's harder to rebound than it used to be at his age with all his wear and tear. And doesn't mean he's not, still a smart quarterback who can, whatever. I don't want to compliment him because he's an ex-Packer, and there's a lot of reasons I don't want to compliment him. Besides football. But okay. they can tell the story similar with Punk too, and I think people would get behind him in a way too if they felt like, let's cheer him on to try to push through even with at his age to another title shot.
I look at CM Punk as sort of similar to an old aging boxer or MMA fighter who's just had a
Jets quarterback.
Or Jets quarterback. Well, there's different than the Jets quarterback, because this way he won. Unlike the Jets quarterback, we'll see how they do next Monday night. But the fact that he had a big win and he's excited, but his also first thought of all I had to do to get to this point, and if I fight someone again, I have to go through a fight camp. I have to train a certain way, and it's like that's months of my life right now that I can't dedicate mentally to doing. But in a few months, whether there be a new challenger or something else, I might be able to step into that when my body heals, and then I feel I can go through that process. But right now, I just can't. As for Aaron Rodgers, he's part of the Jets are part of his vanity tour, and they're 2-3, and again, they haven't made the playoffs since 2010.
No way, really?
Yep.
I mean, I know it's not great being a Jets fan, but that's not great.
Every other team in the 4 professional sports have made the playoffs at least once. And also another fun stat I've heard: the Winnipeg Jets have scored 7 points in the playoff game, goals, hockey, more recently than the Jets have.
You got all the stats ready to go. I tell you what, I'll root for the Jets as soon as Aaron Rodgers isn't the quarterback anymore, which could be, in 2 weeks.
Don't do that. Don't root for the Jets. I'm a Jets fan. My wife's a Bengals fan. We've given our kids rough choices, but the Bengals have at least been decent. I don't tell anyone to root for the Jets. This is the choice I made as a young kid growing up in New York, and don't be like me, Torch listeners.
Well, it was tough being a Timberwolves fan for a very long time, but no longer. I like the retooled Wolves too. That's good.
Even with this trade,
team.
The big trade with the Knicks. I'm a big Knicks fan, but that's my first favorite team.
Well, how do you feel about Karl Anthony Towns on your team?
I've had some arguments with Torch contributor Rich Fan about this because I've watched Karl Anthony Towns. So my wife's from Kentucky. He went to Kentucky. My brother-in-laws are big Kentucky basketball fans. So I've been watching him before Minnesota, and my problem is there's a lot of wrestling. I'll connect it to wrestling a bit. He's someone who was a number 1 pick and gets paid a lot of money, but isn't your superstar that's going to win you a championship.
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of the struggle that I have with him is that, and Wolves fan knows better than me, he gets into foul trouble. He's 7 feet and he wants to shoot 3-pointers. So he doesn't get the full use of his size. Mm-hmm. And I just know the New York media, when he fouls out of a big playoff game in the fourth quarter, are going to really be hammering him. And I think the Wolves, I know there were some thought process, there was financial reasons for why they traded him, but I think they know they can't win with him, and they'd rather try a Randall, Dante DiVincenzo, other possibility because they know paying Karl Anthony Towns $50 million a year is a lot for someone who's still your second best player, because obviously Anthony Edwards is the main man in Minnesota, which is kind of part of the problem because he's younger than him.
And Rudy Gobert might be the second best player,
right.
and I mean, Jaden McDaniel might soon be the second best player, but that's more because of how talented the Wolves are than anything. But I'll tell you this: Cat shooting threes, the East Coast national media makes fun of him for it. Karl Anthony Towns should be spreading the floor and hitting threes. He's a top 3 or 4 3-point shooter in the league. He is a shooting genius when it comes to long range shots, and it makes it almost impossible to guard him. And Charles Barkley, Minnesota media has made fun of Charles Barkley for 10 years, or however many years Karl's been around, because his only talking point about the Wolves, a team he never watches, is Cat shouldn't be shooting threes. And the media who doesn't watch the Wolves all say Cat shouldn't be shooting threes. Cat's strength and his reason to be an NBA max player is his ability to shoot threes, more than his defense, more than his post-up game. And you're going to love it. And then you're going to learn how wrong the media is who don't watch Karl Anthony Towns or know the maybe the second thing about him. They might know the first thing, which is he went to Kentucky, and that's about it. He's one thing. He is a awesome dude. Like, he is one of the greatest people who you'll never hear local media talk more nicely about anyone than Karl Anthony Towns. He also is a big whiner and complainer about referees flailing his arms. That's a terrible example for kids in Little League, and it drove me nuts, and I'm kind of glad he's gone for that reason. But I will say, very nice guy. I honestly, I'm excited. He's going to be your second or third best player on a championship team, and he can be a really valuable championship star. But it was a financial move, not to cut costs now, but because we're going to lose Naz Reid if we didn't. We wouldn't have had the payroll to keep the players we want to keep, who are a little bit younger than him. But it wasn't like a salary dump. Like they're going to pay as much money for a few years as their salary will still be similar. Anyway, everyone's still here. We had our viewership go up while we talked NBA. But you know what? I feel like I can get away with it more when it's the New York team. People care about New York. Knicks are going to be on TV, and I'm going to follow and root for them this year because as much as I'm glad Cat is gone because he drove me absolutely nuts.
But that's my point. You'll drive me nuts now.
Well, but you know what? He might grow up a little bit, and I'm, in terms of he got better about complaining about the refs late last year. Basically, people started making fun of him a lot online, and Cat, from what I understand, reads his media. He reads what people say about him. He listens to what people say about him. He's on social media, and he actually got better about it. So you actually, I think, are getting the best version of Cat that anybody will have ever seen going to New York. I would be excited if I were you.
I hope so. And I have a soft spot for Julius Randle. He came to the Knicks, kind of led the Knicks resurgence. I mean, the Knicks were really bad for a very long time. Yeah. And Dante DiVincenzo had a lot of big moments last year in the playoffs, so it's hard for them to leave. I think, I'll make this reference. I didn't tell Rich this, but Leon Rose reminds me a lot of kind of when Triple H took over WWE and he just signed a lot of NXT people that he knew. Leon Rose, for those of you who don't know, was Karl Anthony Towns' agent, and it's been sort of behind the scenes that when he became general manager or whatever his title is, president, he was going to sign one of his former clients. And so it's been an open secret for the last couple of years that they were chasing Cat. And I think basically once they offered the Wolves something the Wolves wanted, we are where we are.
It took a lot. The Wolves didn't want to give up Cat. We were, I mean, if Karl Anthony, if Anthony Edwards didn't injure himself in the playoffs, and it doesn't get talked about much, but his production went down like 30-40% after he landed on his tailbone, and we probably would have competed with Dallas better with him. And so we were actually pretty damn close to getting to the finals this year, and pretty much, one game out of first place in the Western Conference, in a very competitive Western Conference, and Cat was a big part of it. Tibbs coached Cat, and Gerson Rosas, who I believe is in the front office too now, he was the GM and president of the Wolves, POB, during Cat's years too. So a lot of people in New York know him well, and they wanted him. So and Gerson built the Wolves team right now almost as much as our current GM did. So anyway, I could go on. People scold us, chat room. We should be talking.
Yeah, I'm sure in a few months during the NBA season, when some games are played, we can revisit this.
We can. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll be revisiting it again in the spring when the playoffs start.
We have a lot to talk about, but we'll have an ongoing a lot to talk about NBA wise, Chris. This is fun. Anyway, I'll stop. I could talk more. I like talking Wolves, but let's talk Raw. Let's actually pause and just introduce ourselves. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Monday, October 7th, 2024. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, a lifelong Timberwolves fan. I watched the first game ever the Timberwolves played in a college dormitory with a friend of mine who also liked the NBA, and I've been a fan of them from day one through the little Kevin Garnett era. So I'm excited about this year. And but I've also covered professional wrestling longer than the Timberwolves have been around as a team in the NBA with the Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter that I started in high school. And it's been my job since I graduated college. I did it throughout college and was doing well enough and never had to do job interviews like my friends. And then here I am podcasting now here on the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show and also on the PWTorch YouTube channel. If you're live streaming us on YouTube, welcome. If you're a VIP member or Patreon supporter, you are invited to join us as a video caller. That link is on the Patreon page for PWTorch VIP and also at the top and bottom of my TV report at PWTorchVIP.com. VIP members get a ad-free version of our website with bonus content, which, by the way, included today, roundtable reviews and 1 to 10 scores on Bad Blood from the Torch staff. Sean Radican, Rich Fan, Greg Parks, and I wrote reviews and scored the event. That is a written roundtable review. We've been doing that going back to the late 1980s, our staff doing reviews of pay-per-views. And if you're a VIP member with a full VIP membership, you can read those back issues dating back to like the very first SummerSlam ever. Like WrestleMania 4 is the first WrestleMania I covered. And so, yeah, you can dive into our back issues. Almost all of them are on demand, either PDF or all text version or both. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. If you are curious about VIP membership, you may have heard good things about it. And if you haven't tried it out yet, we encourage you to do so. You can also get a 7-day free trial at Patreon. I put that graphic up on the screen for our YouTube viewers. Patreon.com/PWTorchVIP. That gives you access to our VIP podcast and ad-free versions of our free shows where the commercial breaks just jump right past the commercials and go right back to content. Otherwise, full VIP membership is at PWTorch.com/GoVIP. That includes Apple Podcast compatibility through Patreon, Spotify compatibility, and also compatibility with just about every other iOS or Android app. No advanced settings. We have a really cool setup where it's just a single click and you're in. Once you get a validated VIP password. So check it out and see if you like it. All right. So back to introducing ourselves here. We have our co-host, Chris Maitland, who is a New York Knicks fan and a New York Jets fan, as we've learned, or as you've learned. I already knew that. And Chris, welcome to the co-host chair. You are part of the PWTorch Daily Cast lineup. Why don't you talk a moment about your show, what you do there, and I'll put a graphic up for people.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Besides being a huge sports fan, I also host the Torch Daily Cast. Comes out on Wednesdays, Wrestling Coast to Coast with my good friend, the newly married Justin McClelland. We talk about independent wrestling, a lot of different shows all across the country, sometimes world. Our show last week, we talked about a joint show between West Coast Pro Prestige Wrestling and DPW, Deadlock Pro Wrestling, Roseland 9, which actually has some changes due to the hurricane, the previous hurricane, not the one that's hitting tonight or tomorrow. And basically, we cover a different promotion every week. We review the shows, talk about other issues that are up on independent wrestling, like streaming services and how they almost seem to be going away as more shows move to YouTube, like the one we covered last week. And yeah, just talk about, we see different matches, see kind of how different wrestlers, not WWE necessarily, but in other promotions, how they're utilized or not utilized well in the independent shows. And we have a good time doing it. We were originally the Honor Speak podcast and switched over when Sinclair Broadcasting got out of the Ring of Honor business. But yeah, we're there every week. And this week we'll be doing Wrestling Open, a short 2-hour show that appears on IWTV every Thursday as part of Beyond Wrestling. And they do kind of like an episodic show, which is good for us to cover wrestling shows that don't have long TV, like Raw or Dynamite, and how they kind of go from angle to angle. So, yeah, we're there every Wednesday, and you can email us at torchcoasttocoast@gmail.com.
Awesome. All right. So, yeah, search PWTorch and subscribe. Different shows each day of the week, different themes, different hosts, and it's free. So there's no reason not to search PWTorch right now and subscribe. While you're at it, subscribe to the Wade Keller podcast. That is our blue logo show. It's podcast only, not on YouTube. Includes our weekly flagship. We're also looking to do an AEW Wrestle Dream preview episode later this week too. So good time to subscribe to that. Search Wade Keller, and while you're at it, subscribe to the Red Logo Show. That's the podcast version of our YouTube post shows, and that also includes some really cool flashbacks this week and last week on the beginning of the Wednesday war between NXT and on USA and AEW Dynamite. By the way, just a reminder, Dynamite tomorrow is going to be on is going to air tomorrow instead of Wednesday. So just a change in schedule and an alert for everybody. Okay, so let's get back to I want to talk about the 2-hour Raw format. Obviously, I want to talk about the main event with Sami Zayn coming up short against Gunther and the beginning of the hype for Crown Jewel. Number of things to talk about. But I want to bring up just two things. The Seth Rollins crossing paths with CM Punk. Obviously, they're teasing that match. Feels WrestleMania, likely to be a WrestleMania match, but maybe something sooner. Doesn't have to be WrestleMania. Maybe they got other things in mind. And then a little bit of a interaction with Jey Uso and Seth Rollins too. WWE has a real flow sometimes to the segments where wrestlers are crossing each other and each other's paths, and it's not by accident. It's usually worth reading into. What do you make of those two path crossing moments?
It's one of those always fourth wall moments for me where it's like, oh, the show wasn't scheduled, but it was scheduled because how did Seth Rollins know that when CM Punk was done talking, Seth Rollins happened to be out there too long when Jey Uso match with Xavier Woods was about to begin. But I think it's very important to weave these stories, especially as to speak for Seth Rollins in particular. He hadn't been in WWE in Raw for a while. He came back last week, and he has to mention these other people he's interacted with: Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, but also go back to his main focus right now, which is Bronson Reed. I think it's really good what WWE does is kind of put this pin in your brain, like Seth Rollins and CM Punk have a feud that has not been settled yet.
Yeah.
Jey Uso, as part of the bloodline, whatever his role was, will always have an issue with Seth Rollins. And just because they're on, Raw now, maybe they're all baby faces now, doesn't mean that all their past is forgotten. And it doesn't also mean that they won't have some interaction in the future. So I think that's a really good way for WWE to foreshadow, but not beat you over the head with it, because all three of them, well, basically in the case of Uso and Rollins, they're doing something else in the immediate, but those things are in the background just to make sure people are aware of them.
Yep. All right. So the chat room just kind of chiming in on a couple things. So we can do that. First of all, Michael Merkel says, off topic, I hope Shane McMahon signs with AEW. There is a news item in last week's Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter for VIP members that points people towards whether that's going to happen or not. So go VIP and read the Torch Newswire from last week's newsletter. Because
I just want to throw in, when I lived in New York, I actually once I was on the subway train with Shane McMahon.
How'd that go?
I was surprised. I didn't know. Just it's one of those New York things, right? It's just like he got on the train. We were on the 6th train. We got off at the same stop, I think 23rd Street. And I remember texting, Rich and Justin, some other friends of mine, and thinking, which McMahon do you think I would have been on the subway with? And it was an obvious answer who it would be.
Yep. Yes. So he wasn't doing anything crazy, like.
No, he was like a normal person just on the subway. When I lived in New York, I didn't really get into approaching famous people. My wife would get annoyed with me because I would see famous people be like, "Oh, that's Chris Rock, that's whoever," and I'd be like, "They're over there walking." So he was just on the train. He just got off the same place I did, and he went one way, and I went a different way.
Yes, cool. All right. So more on topic from the chat room. Anthony B says Punk versus Rollins, but will it have a title and will it main event night one? That's quite a journey to travel between now and then. I think Gunther and Cody will still be champion come WrestleMania next year. So I think it'll be just a grudge match. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think it'll be a grudge match. I know they kind of did this last year, but I think the best way for them to have it is in the Royal Rumble, because if Punk's gone for a while, him coming back and like attacking Rollins kind of doesn't fit his character unless Rollins calls him out. But maybe they have we both went for the same goal. We didn't reach it. And, you stopped me from doing it or vice versa. And so we need to wrestle. So I think that is probably the best way for them to go for a WrestleMania match.
Now, we're in trouble with the chat room. A Milano 20 says, Wade, put yourself in my shoes. I told a casual friend to tune into you after Raw for the first time, and he just texted me saying, we're almost 20 minutes in, and what is this? Well, we did talk for opening 10 minutes. We get right to it, but it was a big trade. But we're back to wrestling.
Great,
yeah, if your friend wants to give up for life on us over that, he can, but he's going to miss out on, I think some good wrestling analysis. So, but I'm sorry.
Very quality programming and work that I also subscribed to when I was in college, and I'm a CM Punk old man with gray hair. So,
all right. And Brian Bayless chimes in and says VIP is well worth it. So that's good. Okay, so let's shift to our video callers. And because we left a lot of topics on the table, and we'll start with Rude Dog. Rude Dog, welcome. Good to see you. How's it going?
See you. So,
Chris, I feel you should adjust your camera because it looks like you have Raw tattooed on your forehead, and people are going to think you're a super fan.
I'm moving. All right.
That's just, I don't know if I could look at that and not just keep laughing. All right, go ahead, Rude. It just lined up so perfectly. It was very funny. All right, go ahead, Rude Dog. Now it looks like you're wearing a Raw crown. Go ahead, Rude Dog.
Poor man alone. Jeez.
I'm trying to.
Oh, there we are. Yeah.
I'm thinking Raw. Something there.
Yes, thought bubble.
I always appreciate hearing NBA talk. So
good.
It doesn't distract me, and also it's cool to hear about random encounters in the subway and whatnot. So, but anyway,
I live in the Midwest now. That was 2013, so I don't. 2014, so I don't do that anymore.
Right on. So, so you kind of touch on this, but I expected Drew McIntyre to be off TV because of the 16 staples in his head, and losing the Hell in a Cell match. Usually, just doing that is like enough to be off TV for a while. But I was surprised to see even CM Punk show up. But when he did show up, and he was all hobbled and not. I mean, is this just for him to get off TV? Like, I was almost expecting a Rollins feud starting with CM Punk tonight. So do you think we're going to have to wait a while for that?
I don't know how long. You know what I mean? I don't want to know how long. I mean, I want to be surprised when he shows up. I don't. He might be out till Netflix era. He might be out 3 weeks and come back. But obviously they wanted to flag for everybody. They want to sell the Hell in a Cell effects, and I'm a big proponent of that. And then they wanted to flag that there's still unfinished business with Seth, and if Punk returns, which of course he will, Seth is waiting for him. So I like the way they do that. They don't need to be making money on it next week in order to lay the groundwork for it. And I think that's smart. There should be things happening sort of undercurrent that surfaces when it's time, as opposed to only talking about feuds that are actually happening in the moment. So I like it. Chris, anything you want to add about that?
Yeah, I think they don't want to put aside the feud that Seth Rollins' immediate attention is with Bronson Reed, because Bronson Reed attacked him.
Yeah.
He ended up costing Reed the match against Braun Strowman, and that is like the immediate concern. The Punk feud has not gone away. It'll be there in the background, but right now, Seth Rollins' main focus is Bronson Reed, so they wanted to make sure that was clear.
All right, Rude Dog, back to you.
Yeah, I also forgot Raw was 2 hours again, and when the main event happened, I was like, wait, this is happening right now? And then I was like, oh, there must be something bigger happening, and then it just ended. But so, what do you think of the main event, and what's next for Sami Zayn?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Sami could move into Bloodline storyline. We cross paths with Cody. When we talk about WWE kind of laying the groundwork for things, Cody showing up made sense because they want to promote Crown Jewel and have that stare down between Gunther and Cody at the end. By the way, I might forget to say this. I really like Joe Tessitore showing the graphic for Crown Jewel, and it showed Cody and Gunther, and it showed Nia Jax and Liv Morgan. And he says, now this graphic dropped yesterday. That was based on current champions. That can change. Because I know a bunch of people, I didn't see this, but I'm sure a bunch of people are like, WWE gave away the result of the Raw match. It's like, no. They put out a poster representing who the current champions are. It's obvious they can change the poster if they need to. I hope WWE does that sometime, where they put out a poster knowing there'll be a title change between now and whatever title match is advertised, and they change the poster to shut everybody up about thinking they gave something away. But that said, it did come across like it gave something away, and I'm glad TorchSupport just drew attention to it, going, obviously we have title matches between now and then. These may not be the champion. So that was a nice touch. But I think Sammy having a little exchange with Cody backstage reminds people, it served the purpose of Sammy going, I hope I'm facing a crown jewel. So that could have been the be-all end. That might have been all it was. But it reminds people they both have a history with the bloodline, or it's just, okay, these two people have something in common. Sammy, an uneasy relationship with the bloodline, and obviously desperately trying to be part of it and being rejected and then embraced and then rejected again, or rejecting it. And obviously Cody's got the tension with Roman and the crew. So that could be next, but it might be something different. Just there might be something to bridge him on Raw in the meantime. Chris, what do you think?
Also, the Kevin Owens factor, since Kevin Owens attacked him, and it couldn't be talked about. It was kind of awkward the way that they dealt with that.
Yeah, we should talk about that. I like that, by the way.
Even though we all know what happened. But yeah, I think that Sami Zayn, it was a good story. I mean, he beat Gunther. Gunther didn't want to face him for a lot of reasons because he, obviously got Zayn and got the best of him. And Sami Zayn had, to use a Japan wrestling term, he had fighting spirit. He's not the bigger person. He fought valiantly through a lot of moves, but finally got wore down. And I think he might be off TV for a week or two, and maybe he'll help out Jey Uso with Braun Breaker.
Yeah, yep, I could see that. We're done.
So Wade, you said you liked the fact that they didn't acknowledge the whole the Kevin Owens Cody storyline. They said we'll save that for SmackDown. Why do you think they did that, and why did you like that?
They acknowledged it a ton. They didn't not acknowledge it. They just didn't. Once they acknowledged it, they didn't elaborate. So they were, because I'm just saying technically, it's not like they didn't talk about it. They kept starting to talk about it and cutting it off. It gave off the vibe, and this is what they were going for, which is this is something that happened outside the confines of a sanctioned fight. It was after an event. It was in the parking lot. They're making it seem like they're just kind of ashamed that it happened because wrestlers should keep the fight in the ring, or at least in the arena. And it's giving off, and again, total storyline. I don't think people should feel insulted, and some people might disagree with me on this, that they're trying to pretend this was real. What they're doing is they're telling a story that as a company, they're embarrassed that this happened. Only fans filmed it, quote unquote. And it's an incident that's being investigated. There might be ramifications. There might be legal issues. We're not authorized to talk about it because it was outside the confines of the show. And that, to me, makes it feel, again, in canon, more real. But that's what I want. I want pro wrestling to come across as being as real as possible. It's one of my, the major issue I had with the Cody Roman stadium thing is it felt like a production. It didn't feel like we're filming something real. It felt like, let's get together and promote something and, overproduce it. And it just was too grandiose and opulent. It was gorgeous. It was cinematic, but the tone was wrong. This is what I like. It felt like this wasn't supposed to happen. Fans filmed it, and we're not quite sure how we're going to handle it yet. And by the way, tune in to SmackDown, because that's, by then maybe we'll talk about it. So that's my argument for it. Before you give your case, Rudog, to what I said or respond, Chris, what did you think of the way that they approached that with like Wade Barrett wanting to talk about it, Joe Tessitore awkwardly, nervously going, I don't think we're supposed to talk about that. And then Cody kind of punting on it.
It reminded me, to make another sports reference, of when someone gets in trouble and either the league or the team will say, we are aware of the situation and we will not be commenting any further.
Yep.
Saying the bare minimum, and like, yes, we acknowledge this happened, but we don't have all the details. I think that's really important to show. I agree with you, Wade, entirely. I think, while you're watching this program, you want it to be real. You want it to be serious. I think for WWE to really make the most of it, there have to be some repercussions for Kevin Owens. It can't just be, well, he attacked Cody Rhodes and now he's going to get a title match, because then every wrestler should attack the champion in the parking lot. So I think the key for me is how they follow up on this. How is Kevin Owens punished? Undisclosed fine might be what they do, but how is he punished for what he did? And showing the seriousness of it will really help make the angle out to be even better than it's already started. All
right, Rudog, your thoughts on all this?
I was expecting like more of a follow up. I mean, I don't know why they have to wait till SmackDown, but that's fine. I mean, I don't even know why Cody was on Raw tonight, but
Well, he said he wanted to scout whoever won the Sammy Gunther match for Crown Jewel.
well,
That works.
I guess it works. But you think he'd want to, talk about what happened to him? But that's fine.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
all good.
your point of view isn't without merit. I mean, I could see someone second guessing Cody showing up and not being in a rage over what. I mean, anyhow. I mean, Kevin Owens beat him up in a parking lot. Maybe Cody doesn't want to. His character doesn't want to address it. But I mean, let me stick with this for another sec. Chris, could they have been? If they wanted to get the effect that they were clearly going for here, which is this happened outside the confines, we're kind of dealing with it internally. Everyone is told don't talk about it. We're sort of embarrassed, or just this aura of something happened that wasn't supposed to happen. Again, I don't think they're saying everything else is fake and this is real. I don't think people should be insulted by this. I think this is a better version of trying to do a shoot work, because those are just nonsense. This was just a feud. It's Kevin Owens finally turning at an angle that was built up, and they presented it in a creative way within the canon of the way they tell stories. I like it. They're trying new things. Could they have done something better in terms of addressing what Rude Dog is saying, which is, why does Cody not want to talk about it? Why does Joe Tessitore try to cut off Wade Barrett from talking about it? Would there have been a better way to frame this and kind of be more clear about why they're kind of trying to avoid the topic on Monday night, at least?
Yeah, I think it would have been better for Cody to say, I've been advised not to talk about this. Though, again, you don't want your top babyface being like, the legal team told me not to say anything. Technically they could fight. But I think that's what you have to be concerned about. I think Cody, I know they wanted to have the stare down with him and Gunther, but I would have rather him just not have been on the show and just not, you've mentioned it like the way the commentators did, but not have him there, because to me, it just seems ridiculous that Cody Rhodes, world champion, who is willing to step one day against the bloodline by himself and all these other things, is not going to want to talk about Kevin Owens. Or maybe he should say like he's still processing it. He's still surprised. He doesn't know why he did that. Maybe say that as well, as opposed to, I don't want to talk about it. Just seemed to me kind of weird.
Yeah, I think that's fair. By the way, Cy T in the chat says, WWE's handling of KO and Cody reminds me of UFC when Conor threw the trolley at Khabib's bus. They play it like a PR disaster. So yeah, I mean, you kind of think how would UFC or the NFL treat something like this if something happened outside, two rivals got into an incident or a fight and it was filmed by fans. And as Dan points out in the chat, WWE new fans would film it. I'm sure they had their own person filming it on a camera in case fans didn't, or it wasn't the angle they wanted. But I complain a lot, and I will continue to, when they have these, film someone backstage for no apparent reason. They've dropped showing people on their phone, which I'm glad, because that went on too long and it was stupid. But like when the camera hangs with someone walking backstage after the interview, you're like, why are they still filming this person? The interview's over. And then all of a sudden something happens newsworthy. Everything just feels fake. And there's ways to make that look more real pretty easily. And I wish they would do that. This is an example of them paying attention to that kind of thing, making it feel more real in the immersive environment of the stories that they're telling on the TV show. So I agree with Chris that I think your suggestion is good. And I probably would have helped a little bit, Rudak, if they elaborated for your appreciation of it, if they overtly framed it a little bit more, so we kind of knew why Cody was waiting and what the official stance was, rather than everyone just seeming nervous to talk about it.
Right. Because I still haven't even watched the clips online. I've just heard about it. So it's just kind of weird for it to just be hanging over your
KO
head.
confronts Cody, they argue, and KO punches him and beats him up. Right. It looked good, but yeah, I mean, that's the very brief summary of it. But yeah, check it out.
That's what I figured. So, all right, I'll go to a different topic. So, Rachel Rodriguez returned a Bad Blood, helping Dom and Liv. She was a driver for Dom and Liv today on Raw. I thought she was a terrible, smiling babyface. So I'm glad to see her come back as a heel. What do you think her role is going to be with Dom and Liv and the Judgment Day?
I like it. It's kind of like Camille over in AEW. And at first I was like, Raquel was so different here. I was like, is this Raquel Rodriguez? Like, or am I mixing two women up? Like, she was so like there was a split second where I'm like, is this that smiling hapless babyface character? And it was weird. So I mean, I like it. Why not add a little muscle to Liv Morgan's act? And the fact that she's driving the vehicle doesn't make her the chauffeur. It means something, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they easily could have had, JD driving or a driver driving, but they wanted her driving. So that I'm sure they have a reason for that. I'm okay with it. But I mean, having Liv have someone besides Dom to kind of protect her and be her heavy, interfere on her behalf. I don't know. I think it works. And then, eventually she can turn babyface or not. I don't know. I mean, I think it's better use of her than what they were doing before, which obviously just never worked. Chris, what do you think?
I think it's a better use of her. The only thing for me, ultimately, you're going to have to decide why she is someone who's just driving Liv Morgan around and helping her out. She doesn't have her own aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
I think her being asked whether, Liv goes, "Oh, we'll take any questions." And then Kathy Kelly interviewed him, I believe. It was like, well, what is Raquel in the Judgment Day? And it's like, well, no more questions. And it's like, there has to be a motivation for her if she's not in this group to continue to help them. And maybe, what that is, I don't know. But I think it's one of those very vaunted, horrible wrestling cliches, I'll say now. We just have to let it play out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, well, I don't even know. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's a cliche, but I mean, it just is common sense. You're not going to know everything that they're planning at the beginning stage of something, nor should you usually. Sometimes you will, and that's fine, but you won't know until it's confirmed. But yeah, I mean, they're telling stories. And the thing is there were times when you're watching wrestling and you're thinking, they don't know what they're doing. There's no plan for this. But I don't get that vibe from this regime, this booking team. I think they have very much they're plotting these things out. And so I think they've earned our faith, to use a cliche. Let's wait for it to play out before judging it. I mean, you can judge each chapter and kind of guess where it's going, but let them tell the story the way that they want to tell these stories, and until you really come down too firmly at for or against anything. Rudog.
So another topic that I thought was hopefully going to start going away is the bleeping out of the holy shit chants, but it still keeps going on USA, and it even happened on Peacock Network. I don't understand why this is a thing. It just takes you out of the show. It's just I mean, people know what they're saying anyways. So how are you saving face by bleeping this out? And why is this happening on cable or a pay streaming service? And is this going to happen on Netflix too?
And last week, was it after SmackDown or Raw? USA Network ran a show and they were swearing on it, and they didn't bleep it. Why is that a standard for WWE and not other USA Network programming? I would complain less if while the chat was going on, they just went shh the whole time. I would be against it, but I would be less annoyed than shh. And then shh. You hear the announcers and then the noise and then the announcers and the noise. It's jarring. It gives me a headache. I feel like I drank too much the night before. 10 seconds later, it's obnoxious. And I ranted about it in my written report at PWTorch.com. They need to figure out a better solution for this. And honestly, just mute the whole chant till it's over, or find a way to isolate the announcer's microphone from the crowd. You might pick up a little bit in the background if only the announcer mics are on, but you should be able to isolate the crowd mics, but not the announcers, and have some noise canceling technology with the announcers where you can still hear them talk, but they mute the crowd. It's annoying. I mean, if I was a casual fan, I'd turn the channel if they kept doing that. Honestly, it's that obnoxious. Chris, where are you on your anger towards this policy of, as Rudog says, I don't even know why they're doing it. Who cares? It's a crowd chanting it. It's not like the announcers or wrestlers are saying it.
Yeah, I think you've had a lot of other chants in sports. There's been a chant they try to get out of MLS when the goalkeeper does a goal kick, which also it's one of those situations where if you know what's going on, it makes sense. But if you don't, you're like, is my TV broken? Is something happen? And I just don't know I think your idea of some sort of way of keeping the announcers there, but also I just think it just makes it seem a bit not spontaneous, but also, to me, if USA the thing for me, if USA has a structure where they can have commercials, that's fine, and they have other programming with it. Maybe they're worried in their back of their mind that some kids are going to walk in and see it, but still, I think they need to find a better solution. Though, to be honest, again, when I've heard questionable chants in other sports, they've done the same thing. So maybe that's just the easiest way for them to go about it, and we all just have to deal with it.
Just claim they're chanting "Ho, leash it" or something. I mean, we don't need to know exactly what they're saying. It's the crowd chanting something. I don't know. I mean, they're PG rated and they're worried. Just isolate. Let the announcers keep talking or mute it straight through. But the it's annoying. It's really annoying. Rude Dog, what else?
Yeah, I mean, they're a multi-billion-dollar company. They should be able to mute the crowd and just have the announcers talk if they're so worried about it. Like, it's
totally agree.
How is that not possible? It's just mind-blowing. All right, and one last thing. I actually forgot to write what match this was, but Joe Tessamore, he's been doing a good job. And he said one thing today. He's like, it seems like former partners going against each other seems like a trend. And that just made me laugh because, of course, it is. And all partners go against each other. But
yes,
it was just funny to hear him say that out loud. But I think that's all I have for tonight, guys.
Cool.
Appreciate you.
All right.
Thanks, Rude Dog. Good topics. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Wade.
Thanks for contributing to the show. All right, let's just remind you, if you want to be a video caller or you can turn your camera off and be an audio-only caller, the link is in my TV report at the top and bottom at PWTorchVIP.com. And also, if you're a Patreon supporter, we put up a link giving you the link to click to be a video caller there too. All right, up next, we'll go to Kevin Schwartz, who may or may not be on camera. He's done both with us. Kevin, welcome to the show. What's on your mind about Raw tonight?
So, hi, Chris. It's only my third time here, so I'm new. And I love sports too, so it's okay to talk about it. Like I said in the comments, at least you guys have quarterbacks. My Pittsburgh Steelers, we have no idea what's going on, and we're like overrated because the national media will tell you we have this great defense, and we just let the Cowboys run for 100+ yards, and they were like one of the worst running teams. So there you go. We're always supposed to be this team that's supposed to do stuff, and so it's frustrating like that. So I don't know which one's worse, to be a bad team or a team that's supposed to be good, but not. It's the same thing, I think.
If I may interject, because I did go to the University of Pittsburgh, proud graduate, class of 2003. I know a lot of Steeler fans, and the Steelers have won how many Super Bowls?
Well, we won 6 of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I get your point. I get your point, but that's bad. That's one of the things about the Steeler fans and the Steeler organization is what I hate about it. And I am a proud fan, but we live too much in the past like that. What have we done lately, though? We've done nothing. We've been in the playoffs, yeah, but we got blown out by Buffalo. So what's that mean? We're mediocre at best.
After the Jets and the Vikings win Super Bowls, you can come back on, Kevin, and we'll have sympathy for you.
Okay, but you guys have won Super Bowls or been in Super Bowls in the past like we have. It's like, but presently,
I was too young to remember the last time the Vikings were in the Super Bowl in the 70s.
The Jets were last in the Super Bowl in the 60s.
Yes.
And again, the Jets have not made the playoffs since 2010. I was at the last Jets home playoff victory when they beat the Colts, and that was in January 2003. I was still in college.
The Baltimore Colts.
It wasn't
that far back.
No, it was Indy. They won 41-0. That's the last Jets home playoff victory. January, I think 5th. Make fun of my friend Gil. I text him every year on the anniversary of it. 2003. So again, I know the Steelers did not have a good game yesterday. Their defense has let them down, but we're probably not the right people
Yeah, you're not the right people to complain. You ain't the right complaint department. I got to go somewhere else.
Yeah, you do, Kevin. We're gonna have someone from Boston call up next and complain about the Patriots not winning a Super Bowl recently, and we're gonna just hang up on them.
Yeah, that'd be even worse.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't mind talking sports, so it's okay if you do it. I just wanted to say about. I just wanted to get your comment about. Oh, wait! Before I do that, wait. I found a podcast of yours that was older, that was with a trainer of the Road Warriors. Now I can't think of his name. Eddie Sharkey.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was so great. I just wanted to tell you that's one of the gems about this site that I found, is these older podcasts. That was a great interview. Although he has nothing bad to say about anybody.
Oh, I know. That is Eddie's. I've known Eddie Sharkey forever.
And the way he talks about, I shot up Vern Gagne's office building like it was just a walk in the park, like yesterday. Oh yeah, I just took my gun and a shotgun. I blew his apartment. I don't.
Eddie is Eddie's street. He is. The things the stories Eddie has. I mean, I've been around Eddie Sharkey behind the scenes, and he is not a lot different than on air, but he'll say bad things about people. But he is a politician. He will not talk say bad things publicly about people. So it makes for a challenging interview. But he's got great stories. But he was. Yeah, I mean, I'm chuckling at not the notion of shooting up an office, but that Eddie talks about it the way that he does and the way that you framed it. It's old school wrestling, and it was downtown Minneapolis, and he was mad, and it's on our Blue Logo show, the Wade Keller podcast feed, if you want to check it out, so you don't have to go digging for it if this sounds intriguing. But yeah, he trained Jesse Ventura, the Road Warriors, Bob Backlund. He's been around a long time and been around a lot of people. And he was a promoter of the indie shows where Sean Waltman, Lightning Kid, 1-2-3 Kid, and Jerry Lynn had their famous series of matches. I put them both on the map in the late 80s. So go check that out, everybody. It was just
funny listening to him, because he was like, all wrestlers never fought in the back and never. Well, wait a minute now, because Mike Hedstrand is known as a fighter. He has a famous fight in Korea with Too Cold Scorpio. If you don't know about that one, that was So when he's saying that, they're all good guys, they never fight, or, that's that politician. I think that's in him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyways, another thing.
Different business back then, other than what KO did to Cody. That was a throwback. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. That was but his stable was awesome. The Road Warriors, Rick Rude, all those guys. That was an all-star.
Jake Roberts, a spoiler. Yes. I love the original Legion of Doom, the whole faction.
Yeah. Also, before I ask about tonight, I want to ask you about the match on Saturday between Bayley and Nia Jax. Did you think that it was like horrible, like I do? Like, they kept messing up everything. I don't get it. Like, it was like there's a spot where Bayley jumps from the ring outside, and Nia, instead of catching her or whatever, she just I don't even know how to explain what they were doing. They just watched everything.
Kevin, I've not been silent on this. I have a detailed report at PWTorch.com in the pay-per-view review section, so you can read my review of the match there. And also, I did the VIP roundtable for like an hour and a half Saturday night, and we talked a lot about that match. So yeah, I'll point you there because we want to focus on Raw. But yeah, go check out. I wrote about the match. I covered those PLEs, and my opinions are out there to be had. Especially about a PLE match. So what about tonight? What about thanks. What about tonight?
So I was gonna ask something, but I forgot. I know what it was. The Xavier Woods match.
Yes.
At what point are we going to get this split? I mean, this is like one of those drawn out things. So when they do the drawn out between Drew McIntyre and CM Punk for like a year, their rivalry's been going on for like a year. That they did it really well because they had to manage the injuries and whatever. But with this, it's like drawn out to the point where it's like we know what's going to happen, so let's just get to it. Why do you think they're drawing this out?
So I just disagree strongly with the whole premise. I don't think it's drawn out. I think every week is the New Day have been together forever. They had a hiccup in the middle because they lost Odyssey Jones, so they had to recalibrate it. So that adds a little bit to seeming quote dragged out. But every week something happens. I mean, I don't know how you condense the story than what they've done. I mean, Kofi gave Xavier a title shot after Xavier's been kind of, is persnickety the word over things? Is that a word? I don't know. It came to mind. He seems on edge and kind of irked, and so Kofi's like, "Hey, I got you a title match," and then Xavier loses in 6 minutes clean, and then instead of thinking about that, he's just mad that Kofi was a good sport with Jay afterwards, and complaining about that. I think this has been fun to watch. I'm in no hurry. Where are you going, Kevin? Why do you need to have everything happen instantly? Let's just every week something different happens.
Because this one's not, to me, it's like, it's not an exciting thing for me to watch. I mean, I know they need stories, but I mean, I'm not.
But I don't think it's realistic. He would just snap and completely change. I think, think of marriages. People don't just go from loving each other to filing divorce papers. There's days, weeks, months, years, on occasion decades of misery and discontent before something really happens. And I think people are watching this tension with Xavier where he's going to snap, draw. There's something every week where, like, is this going to be the moment when he turns on his best friend Kofi, or Kofi has enough of him? I'm enjoying it. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the New Day have been together so long that I think it's not easy just to break them up over a week or two. I think we've been so predisposed in wrestling of, like, we just talked about Raquel and Liv Morgan. Raquel's come back a week, and we're like, well, when are they going to break up? I think if you're, I mean, the New Day's been around. I remember seeing them one of their first shows, and they actually got booed, which was the Royal Rumble 2015, which is the Roman Reigns Royal Rumble that he won.
Still can't believe they thought that act would get cheered.
Yeah, it was funny because they were. I mean, I remember going to that show for my friend's bachelor party in Philadelphia, and being on the subway there back
with Shane McMahon.
Shane was not there.
Oh, that was a different time. Okay,
different time. But there were people booing New Day on the train because someone's had a New Day shirt, and this is after the show.
Oh my god!
And they're booing New Day. I'm taking the subway back to the Amtrak back to New York, and they're booing. They're saying New Day sucks on the train. I'm like, wow, they'll never be popular, and here we are. They've had a long legacy as a tag team, and I think Xavier Woods is showing. One of the things I liked about his personality, it was like a real person. Like, he's annoyed about maybe where his career is right now, but he still has love for Kofi. So he didn't want Kofi to go back in there when Braun Breaker came in. He was like, that's not your problem. But when Kofi went in, he at least, he pulled him out. And obviously there's going to be a next chapter where he's like, I tried to save you, and look, I got speared too. I just think that if you've built them as the greatest tag team in WWE history, that have all these reigns, all this time together, you can't just break them up over like 3 weeks.
Okay. I mean,
Kevin, your camera's on. Welcome.
Yeah, my camera's back on.
Right.
I can't get it right, so that's why I keep turning it off.
You look like you're in the same room as Rude Dog, by the way. You got the wood ceiling beams. It looks kind of rough. It's just like it's a little unfinished.
I'm in my
Rude Dog setting. Well, I know. So I think Rude Dog is too, or his attic or something. So
I'm in my basement too.
Yeah, we're in my fan room. I could show you all my Steeler stuff in here, but I won't. I would pop so pay me like that.
I'd pop so big if Rude Dog just showed up behind you and waved right now.
That'd be funny, because that's what I thought. I said his room looks like my room.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But I just want to get it going, and it's not really a match I'm excited to really see when it does finally happen, because it's probably going to happen at WrestleMania. That's the thing. They're gonna drag us all the way to WrestleMania, and they'll probably have a match on the first night of WrestleMania. Possibly, I don't know. It's nothing I hate or nothing. It's just it's long. It seems long to me because this rivalry isn't going to excite me too much.
By the way, Chris, what do you think about the fact that Xavier lost in 6 minutes? I mean, they didn't. I thought they're going to tell a story of Xavier wants to win a singles match. It's his chance to do it. Jay just finally won a singles title. And they didn't play that angle up. This really felt like the match was just a conduit to get to Xavier being more on edge. And, he was granted a match and came up short. And so I don't know. It's just maybe it's the 2-hour format of Raw, and maybe it would have gone 12 minutes if they weren't more limited on time. I mean, maybe they didn't want it to be so short, and they just had to make it that way.
Yeah, I didn't feel the commentators also didn't do a good enough job of kind of discussing the Usos' New Day history, that they've wrestled each other a lot in the different stakes, but now they're
That's a
wrestling
good point.
more.
Yeah.
Those matches
exactly.
to random people. But yeah, I think his story is that he's angry, and it's just a way to like move his anger forward. And so yeah, he has to lose quickly. I think we've become, and this is probably from covering so much independent wrestling, we've been too focused on how long are their matches? Can they go longer and longer? And it's like the story is he's not on Jey Uso's level, so Jey Uso should beat him pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was odd that they did it so quickly to me also. Well, I think it's called because also they're trying to figure out 2 hours here too. So we can't have really 20-minute matches.
This exact crew has run SmackDown for 25 years at 2 hours. I mean, they know how to do a tour show. Obviously the Judgment Day they had fewer wrestlers there and did less with Judgment Day than they would have. I mean, we're used to Raw being 3 hours with this crew, but I mean, they know how to do a 2-hour show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
No, that's it. I hope I get an NBA team so we can talk NBA too, but I don't think I'm ever going to get one.
Where are you?
In Pittsburgh.
They don't love basketball in Pittsburgh.
No.
Why? What? No. How is that possible? Like that? Just a major city just doesn't like basketball.
They never have.
Never had an NBA team, and
nope.
They've kind of been hit or miss with the Panthers, who were really good after I graduated college, and the last couple years have been good. But Pitt's not really a college town, unfortunately, as an alum.
Do you get the 76ers games, or do you just hate everything Philadelphia if you're in Pittsburgh?
No, I don't really hate Philadelphia. I'll get all the games here on TNT and all that, but we don't. The only thing that's big basketball is the zoo. They go crazy for college, but even then, it's like hit or miss because they're good sometimes, but not good other times. Just like our football team.
Yeah,
our Pitt football gets no respect. They're 5-0, and they're not even really ranked yet.
They did get ranked. They're 22 in the AP.
Oh, okay. So they're finally ranked. Notre Dame was ranked for a long time, even when they lost to Northern Illinois, and I don't know what they did with Alabama. Alabama just lost to Vanderbilt. So it's like Pitt doesn't get any. It's not the 80s anymore when Dan Marino was here.
No.
And we had our own stadium there too. We actually had where the Peterson Event Center where Pitt plays now, the basketball. That used to be that's called Cardiac Hill. I
was at the last game against Notre Dame my freshman year.
Yeah.
We ran on the field, and I went to the 30-yard line because I thought being by the goalpost was not a good idea. The university actually gave us, we brought in our ID, and they gave us pieces of the turf, which I have somewhere in my parents' basement.
Oh man, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So I wish the Steelers would have drafted Dan Marino, by the way. Instead, they drafted a defensive lineman who got in a DUI car accident and never really played.
I wish they had too, because he would have gone to the Dolphins.
Yeah, that's not okay. I shouldn't be complaining to you. I forgot who I'm talking to. I shouldn't say nothing.
All right, Kevin.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we've learned a lot about Pittsburgh sports.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's shift to Dan, our next caller here. Dan, welcome. What's on your mind about Raw tonight?
The 2-hour format.
Yeah,
I thought it was kind of a weak lineup this tonight's show because the heavy hitters weren't there.
You had Cody as a guest star, a world title match, an intercontinental title match, a 5-on-5 women's match, and a grudge match that's been building up for almost 2 months with Sheamus and Pete Dunne. And they packed that all into 2 hours. and CM Punk made an unadvertised appearance at the beginning, and you're saying they didn't deliver stars? I don't know that I could disagree with a summary of Raw more than how I interpreted your comment there.
It's probably my poor choice of words, I guess.
Well, you gave me an opening for a rant, but go ahead.
No, that's cool. I prefer to hear that versus all the Pittsburgh talk right now.
Fair enough. Touché.
The one thing that was kind of interesting or not interesting was like that 10-team women's match, the 5-on-5.
Yeah.
We got a lot of airtime for something that like is kind of irrelevant, but I understand they need some airtime too. But it was like a lull in the 2 hours.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously they're not going to want to do the first 2-hour show and make it look like, well, now the women get no TV time. So they just overcompensated by putting 10 women out there, but they gave them 7 minutes and they cut to a full break, not the double box break. You can watch it in the middle. So we got about a minute at the beginning and about 2 minutes after the break, 2-3 minutes after the break. And that was it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, I don't know what the point of it was other than now that Raw's 2 hours, let's avoid criticism that we're not going to have time for the women anymore. So they just threw all of them out there. Chris, what'd you make of that? Why do you think they chose to do 5-on-5 like that?
Yeah, I agree. I think they didn't want criticism. They had Rhea Ripley cut a promo. They had Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair set up a match against Io Sky and Kairi Sane. But other than that, there wasn't really any presence of the women on the show. So this to me was all, again, maybe the independent wrestling mind of like, these people are all here. Let's have them in one match. That way we can have 10 women. Again, no split screen. So only 3 minutes of airtime. And it doesn't really lead to anything. But we had it so that no one will say that we didn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally get that. The other thing I wanted to bring up was that the production team showed this couple that said they canceled their honeymoon or postponed it to see Rhea, and she wasn't even on the show.
Well, she might be in part 2 because they're taping a second episode of Raw tonight. So, for next week.
I was thinking maybe a dark match, but yeah. I didn't even know about the taping.
I wrote about that in my roundtable review of Bad Blood that we put up for VIP members and Patreon supporters. That I like the 5-match PLE format's fine, but I would rather have them shorten a couple of matches and squeeze in a 6th match just to kind of pick up break up the pace. But I feel bad for fans paying these ginormous ticket prices, and you see 40% of the top stars at most on these shows now, and they're not doing like bonus dark matches or anything. So I hope they're cognizant of that. They have big crowds right now, and a lot of companies that have hot runs start kind of taking it for granted. They kind of just think we can't do no wrong and everything we're doing is great. But over time, you're going to have a whole bunch of people who go to shows and then they don't go the next time. AEW's experienced that. Almost every city they go to, they had bigger crowds than the next time and even smaller the next time. You want to make it, make fans feel like they get their money's worth. And so, yeah, Rhea Ripley's a big star, and I think they have to take into consideration when people buy a ticket for Raw, they want to see in person, not just on a big screen, the top stars. And it's going to be harder now with the 2-hour format the next 3 months at least to do that. And I hope they're cognizant of it. And when they're not doing double tapings, that they do put out that they know that they should have wrestlers make an appearance in front of the fans. I think that's important to a lot of fans. Chris, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's really important for the paying customer to feel that when they come to a show in their hometown that they want to go, they want to see their favorite wrestlers. We Justin and I went a few weeks ago to the AEW Collision taping in Dayton, and that definitely had the feeling of a show that I don't know why anyone would ever want to come to that again, just the way the crowd was. But
yeah,
I think you can get away with it once if you have enough stars. But again, I can't imagine. I'm about to celebrate 10 years of marriage of telling my wife that we shouldn't go on our honeymoon. We went on a Mediterranean cruise to go to Raw instead. I probably wouldn't still be married for 10 years if that was the case. But I think you can get away with this once. I think people can kind of understand the TV format of wrestling, that not everyone's on every TV show, but you need to make sure the next time you come that you serve the audience, or you're going to have trouble in future visits.
Yeah, well put. Yeah, it's not about having every star. It's just making sure you don't don't put people on a poster who aren't going to be there. That's number one. Number two, make sure there's enough stars that you feel like, like an unadvertised CM Punk appearance can make up for maybe Rhea Ripley not being there if she's not there in person. But, just when attendance is good, that's a time to really work extra hard to earn their business to come back and pay those prices again. Because at the prices they're charging now, and it's a lot more than a few years ago, people are going to be more discerning, about whether they come back. They're going to evaluate the value of the experience at a higher standard. Same way if you pay, $22 for a burger and fries at a nice restaurant compared to, $10 at McDonald's. I mean, you're going to expect more in some form or fashion. So anyway, Dan, back to you.
They had like production issues, quote unquote, but that was just the Wyatt 6 stuff, right? That was flashing on the screen.
Good question. The Wyatt stuff happened right afterwards during the Miz Karrion Kross thing, but it came across to me like the technical problems actually were right before that were unplanned and sort of pointless. It was awkward. The announcers didn't really know what was happening. They went to a crowd shot, came back. I got the sense, Chris, just something wasn't, someone just kind of messed up the timing of something. It worked fine because it almost seemed like the Wyatts were probably interfering, but they didn't have the scratchy noise on the screen and the graphics until the actual promo with Miz and Cross. What any thoughts on that, Chris? Did you notice?
Yeah, I felt the same. I thought there was just some sort of, I think that was around the time they were trying to talk about the Kevin Owens Cody situation, so it seemed even a little bit more awkward.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't talk about this, and by the way, like the camera cut, it's almost like someone pulled the plug when they're supposed to talk about it. But yeah, I think that was just a technical difficulties. I know, obviously the Wyatt 6 that's there, they can kind of cause chaos in many different ways, but I just feel that was just sort of an error on WWE's end.
Yep. What else for us, Dan? But by the way, I want to note for people who are listening to us in progress, we just heard from Jason, our on-site correspondent tonight, who left a little bit before the end of Raw, the taping, but he'll be joining us momentarily. So we should have some news, but we'll give spoiler alerts on how things went and if Rhea Ripley appeared in person, for instance. But go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, cut me off if he's ready to go. But well, I lost my train of thought now. It's okay. Oh, the Jey Uso match and Xavier Woods. Like Xavier Woods had the upper hand for like 90% of the match, and then Jey just super kicks him and frog splashes him to win. And I was like, I can understand why Woods is mad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's not that Xavier isn't gonna. They've constructed his story in a way where there's times where you can sympathize with him, but it's not that he's entirely wrong. It's that he's handling it poorly. That he's, ultimately he's getting frustrated in a way that's out of scale with things that are out of his control instead of taking ownership of what's in his control. And yeah, I mean, and just kind of being a jerk about things. And so he can be right about some things, but you can be right, but also end up the bad guy in the end because of how you make your point.
Yeah, that's like Drew McIntyre's whole run with CM Punk. He was saying facts, but he was being an a-hole about it.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. All right. That's all I had.
Blur that out. All right. Cool, Dan. Thanks. Appreciate it. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So Chris, the Jey Uso title reign, gets a win over Xavier, has a stare down with Seth. What do you think about Jey as a singles wrestler now that we're a little bit of the ways in? At the beginning of the match, they said, there's the old thing, you're not a champion until you defend the title successfully. Now he has a decisive win over Xavier, but it was a bit of a backdrop for the Kofi storyline. And then they, did a little Seth thing. What do you think about Jey now that he is a singles champion? Is this something I should stick with for a while? Because the crowd reactions for him continue to be amazing. I mean, like really high-end crowd reactions for him. And I mean, they have something there, and I don't know how serious they are about making Jey a single star. If this is just a bridge to get somewhere else. What are you picking up on? What do you think?
I think his crowd reactions are tremendous. Something that I didn't consider possible, even though I've been a big fan of the Usos. I never saw him as a single star.
Yeah.
The only elephant in the room for me is that he just becomes champion, and then his twin brother comes back, and to me, just you can't have all these people kind of crossing over and not have Jay address his brother. You just can't have that go on for long.
That's a good point.
Especially since, Jimmy, I think it was against Gunther maybe earlier in the year. I think that's what kind of began their WrestleMania feud, was Jimmy costing him the title. So that's the elephant in the room for me. I know they have the brand split, but as Cody showed, you can show up whenever you want. But I mean, I think to me, Jey Uso is a really good example of the importance of crowd reaction in wrestling. He's not the greatest wrestler of all time or whatever, trademark, but the crowd gets behind what he does, and that's kind of the most simplistic form of wrestling, and it actually makes you a star, not opposed to just doing moves for move's sake. He comes out, yeet has become a catchphrase. People are wearing his shirt. They are doing his chant, and I think they should go with him for as long as the crowd's still behind him.
What did you make of Braun Breaker and the change in his character compared to last week? Obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously. Feels deliberate. Like last week, they knew they were going to do this. He seems kind of all over the place. Like he'll be polite. It's kind of like Gunther, throw a compliment out there, but then he pulls it away and does an insult. There's something about Braun where it's like, oh my, the dogs are in the house, they're barking, and I'm, I respectfully say you beat me, good for you. And then of course he's just totally heelish, delivering spears. I'm intrigued by it. It feels deliberate to me, but it is a little jarring how suddenly different he is compared to last week. So what do you make of what they're doing with him, and do you like it?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of him kind of being contrite the week before. I think he's an egotistical jock. He might lose, but because he's an egotistical jock, he's going to come back and attack Jey Uso because he thinks he should have won. I think if what he did this week was fine, if maybe he just was off TV last week, and then he just comes back this week and attacks him. I think he kind of did a similar thing with Sami Zayn when Sami Zayn beat him a few months back. And to me, it just shows like, I don't think his character at this point should show, even if it's phony, the contrition, because that's just not how he wrestles. He wrestles like an egotistical jock, and they should just keep his character consistent.
How big can Braun get? How big of a star can Braun Breaker? I should clarify, not Braun Strowman, not Bronson Reed. Obviously, we're talking about him, but joke. You got to insert the joke. Right now, I'm pretty impressed with him. I'm not ready to declare him, the heir apparent to Cody and Gunther and Roman, but I'm also not ruling it out. I think they've done a good job taking a lot of things he did in NXT for different lengths of time and different variations of his presentation, and he's carrying himself. He's got his same character, like you said, kind of the egotistical jock, but he's carrying himself in a way that feels like when you look at him, he's commanding your attention, that he believes he's worth your attention. There is a confidence and a charisma to him that to me is distinct. And obviously there's a brute force athleticism to him that's credible too.
Yeah, I think he's shown a good example of why, the mid-card exists. Someone that, like him, has a lot of potential to be a world champion down the line, but it's not his time now. But in the meantime, he can get a lot of experience as well as kind of develop his character. I think he's someone who, obviously a physical specimen, and obviously, even though in the back of my mind, I can't grapple by the fact that he's the son and uncle of two WWE Hall of Famers, and they don't mention that. But I think that this is a good example for him to kind of hone his character in on this level, and then maybe in 2 years or a year or two, he's able to make himself into that main event star. The potential's all there. I think he can really definitely do it. Yeah, as someone just put in the chat, I could definitely see him having a big Royal Rumble moment. Maybe not win, but get into the final, 4 or 6 to kind of establish himself as getting on the next level.
The chat room has a few comments here. Sadler version 3 says Braun's booking was weird today. I prefer him staying face, but I don't understand the angle last week. Then Dan says I thought Braun was being disingenuous last week. And Sadler version 3 says I prefer him staying heel. And then Michael Merkel says I'm glad he went heel. And then Walter Sams just wants him to be called Steiner. why not call him Steiner and have him run through people? I don't have a huge issue with Braun Breaker, but I get, I understand it. I mean, Kurt Hennig had a great name. His dad, Larry the Axe Hennig, was a big name. He was, he was AWA world champion before he went to the WWF, and then they just called him Mr. Perfect. So, I mean, I was a little, irked by that. But there's a whole, it's like Mia Yim. She wanted to change her name. Like she there was a whole history to it that I, read about. She did an interview saying, something she was pushing for. With Braun Breaker, it's kind of it's I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a cool name. I guess that's subjective, but it's the Breaker nickname, and then Braun is, tied to his name. So it doesn't feel like just like a completely made up name like Dean Ambrose instead of John Moxley. Like there's a foundation to it from his nickname in football and his real name. So I don't have a huge issue with it, but it is a little weird. I mean, I don't know, Chris, would it be better if he was just, going by Steiner?
I think at this point it doesn't matter because he's been in the lexicon of WWE long enough between NXT and his time on Raw. I just think of the most faithful Raw watcher who's watched Raw as long as I can remember is my dad, who is not in the key demo. But as wrestling skews older, my dad, my mom, who still watch wrestling, and is how I got into wrestling as a kid, they know who Rick and Scott Steiner. And so there's an instant credibility with an older fan base who remember his dad and uncle, which they gives everyone who's seen a second generation wrestler, when someone comes in, it's like, oh, that's so and so's son or daughter, whatever. You start off at a certain level, and maybe he didn't need that crutch or that help. He's doing it on his own, but I just feel like there's nothing hurtful for tying him to his family. At this point, it doesn't really matter. I know I think of all the second generation wrestlers. I mean, someone like me, I didn't know of Larry the Axe Hennig, so when Kurt came up, I didn't know Mr. Perfect was not mentioning his favorite family name. But then you had like Curtis Axel, where it's like, we want to mention him. We want to mention his family, but not in a clear way.
Yeah, because it was a tribute to Larry the Axe Hennig, his grandpa's nickname, and so, and obviously Curtis being a play on Kurt. But as far as Braun Breaker goes, I know people are all in an uproar over it. It's like he's quoted as saying, "We're sitting around one day, and I'm like, well, I used to block people in football. I used to try to break them in half. That was literally what I tried to do: snap them in half and break them. What if I'm the breaker? I break people, Breaker, and then it came to me. Braun's part of my first name, and so we went with Braun Breaker." Like, that was his brainstorm. And Steiner is a fake name, too. It's Rex Steiner. It's not Steiner. So this is not something where, they pulled the name out of a hat, or they had pre-trademark names. It's just a guy rock stars have changed their name to, make it, just sound more cool, So, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't have a huge issue with it. Okay, let's go to I believe our on-site correspondent Jason giving us a call. Unless it's Jason Australia, we'll find out in a moment here. Jason, welcome.
Hey Wade, hey Chris, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing good. Good to talk to you. So you just got home from Raw?
I did. It was obviously the first 2-hour Raw, and I was had the fortunate opportunity to be at the first 3-hour Raw in St. Louis 12 years ago. So kind of bookended that experiment, and I have to say, it was a weird 2 hours. Like, all the stars were there, but it just felt off. I don't know why. I mean, you had, obviously Cody, you had Liv, and Rhea and Gunther. The only one I didn't see, I left kind of halfway through. I didn't see the rest of Judgment Day, but everyone else, and the Wyatt Six, but everyone else was there. It was just, I don't know, it was weird. The action was good. The main event with Sami and Gunther was good. I thought the Jay and Xavier match was good. The 10-woman tag, that was the one that just felt like you're on 2 hours now, right? You don't need like a filler match. But I mean, it was a good show. It just felt off.
Jason, you're overmodulating a bit. Can you move a little away from the mic as you're talking?
Yeah.
You're loud and it's just a little overmodulated.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, the women's match was weird. I mean, I think they just wanted on the first 2 hour Raw to not make it seem like there weren't enough women on the show. So, like let's just put 10 of them in one match. But I mean, we only saw like 3 minutes of the 7-minute match because they cut to a hard commercial during that too. So it was part of the show.
We sat about 3 rows behind production, and to be honest, I like that stuff. Just seeing, how the magic is made, how the sausage is made, and I spent more time like looking at all the screens. And several times throughout the show, they would come and hand a new set of papers to the people, and they'd take notes. And I'm like, okay, what are they doing now? And I was kind of watching that more than the show. But like I said, it was a good show.
Since you paid attention to that, what fascinated you about it now that you've, what's happening?
To be honest, like, they're sitting there in front of all these monitors and 2 people are just having a discussion. Like, they're oblivious to seeing what's going on until they know they have to hit their cue. And I'm sure they brought out, I won't say new scripts, but obviously production notes and production changes. I think we kind of took a photo and zoomed in, like, Cryon right, Saturday night's main event, or Cryon left, the next Royal Rumble. So, but just seeing, how the magic is made is pretty. And man, we talk about what the wrestlers do every time, but just seeing the army of production people, whether it's changing the rings, which they did probably 4 times throughout the night, to just getting everyone in and out. It's amazing the army of production that they have there.
Jason, what technology are you using to talk to us? Are you just on an iPhone or?
I'm on an iPhone with headphones.
Okay,
we switch over.
It's just super muffled, and we're hearing like a cricket in the background or something. The chat
I
room.
am outside. Let me walk inside. People are sleeping, but
well, I mean that's fine. I mean we can live with a cricket. I just between the cricket and how muffled and overmodulated it sounded, I just was curious if there was an adjustment that could be made.
It's just an iPhone issue, something that wouldn't happen with the Droid.
What's that, Jason? Well, now we've lost him completely. Maybe he's switched into something else.
You come from the beyond.
He's on the move. We can hear footsteps, I think. Shifting to now it's quiet in the background. The problem is it's completely quiet now.
It's not good.
What's up, Jason? We heard you say it's not good, Jason. Hopefully you're not on like scare tactics and something bad's happening.
No. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, you're not. Now you sound better.
Okay. I just took out the headphones.
Oh, cool. Okay. Nice.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's interesting. Like the pace of the show, and we haven't talked a ton about it, but obviously people who have enjoyed Raw for a while because of the, not because of, but also not despite, like the 3-hour format, they finally, after all these years, grew into it. They kind of filled it well, and we got, all these backstage segments with Judgment Day that I thought were entertaining. And I don't know. So, I'm curious, just as a live experience, you said it was kind of weird. It didn't feel like you were watching the first 2 hours of a 3-hour show. It sounds like you thought it was something, it felt different than just the first, or going to a SmackDown show, perhaps, would have. What else stood out that felt different other than maybe the awkwardness of the women's match, being there and not having a reason?
I don't know. I've been to SmackDown here in St. Louis. I've been to SmackDown double tapings, and I think if it wasn't a double taping, I would have been satisfied. But with it being the first 2-hour Raw, I would have felt cheated a bit. Even though, like I said, all the stars were there. I think Dominic was on the screen. He didn't come out. But yeah, everything. Even in that first segment, they went back to back to back from Punk to Seth to Jay, and you saw the stars. I just don't know why it felt off.
Let's talk about the reaction for CM Punk. Did they advertise him to you, or was it just a surprise when his music kicked in?
I saw something online that he was going to be there, but other than that, there was no advertisement for him. I think it was telling in the opening when the wrestlers were backstage. I think it was Jay. He walked in front of Cody's bus. I'm like, oh, okay, Cody's going to be here. But yeah, CM Punk got a good reaction. I think probably would have been better if he made it all the way to the ring, but his won't I be able to continue kind of just sets people off. Like, okay, you were in a grueling match and you came out on the other side. What's next? Not, I don't know what's next. And then I did think it was funny. I'm sure it was on TV when he was out there talking, and Seth's pyro went off behind him, which was kind of a tell, which I don't think they wanted. And I didn't even put two and two together when that went off. I'm like, okay, that's weird. But yeah, good reaction for Punk. A good reaction. I mean, everyone got the reaction. I think Jay was the star of the show. I mean, the kids love him. Young boy in front of us, I was trying to take pictures, and every time I tried to take a picture, he'd have his Yeet foam hand in front of me. But yeah, I mean, Jay totally was the star of the show. The match between Sheamus and Pete Dunne got a huge response. I mean, they are doing everything right when it comes to, like Sam Roberts says, cheer the good guy and boo the bad guy. Mm-hmm. Although, like I said, I left halfway through the show for next week, so I can't give too many spoilers, but you have the
spoiler alert, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
You have the, I guess, turn of Braun Breaker in the first show when he attacked Jay and the New Day, and then in the second show, people are cheering Braun Breaker against Kofi Kingston, which is kind of weird.
Oh wow, they chose Braun over Kofi.
Yeah.
Huh. And do you have a theory on that, Jason? Do they side with Xavier because Kofi? They think Kofi's been mean to him, or they're just in Breaker because he's such a badass, as they are saying over and over?
Yeah, I think it's the badass aspect.
Yeah, interesting.
A spoiler that is probably out there. There was a tag team that returned tonight in the second show, and I said it already. Spoiler alert! But the former Viking Raiders are now once again the War Raiders.
Oh, really? Okay.
Decent pop. There was a couple pockets of people, doing their war chant. I had to explain to Ferris why they are now the War Raiders versus the Viking Raiders, and the name change. But good to see them
back. At least
you
didn't have to explain what a Viking experience was to him.
I made the call after yesterday. I didn't want to hear any more about the Vikings, so I called Triple H and said, "Can you change their name?"
Congrats on the undefeated Vikings, by the way, Wade.
Thank you. It's fun. I think they'll go 17-0 now and win the Super Bowl. I've jinxed it, like we all do here in Minnesota. When we get anything good, we jinx it. We get too excited too quickly, but they're looking good. But anyway, we talked NFL earlier. We'll go ahead.
Do you know, Wade, why it was a double taping?
They're on a UK tour next week.
Oh, okay. Got it. Yeah, I didn't know until, like, I messaged you earlier. I didn't know until the day of.
Yeah. Yep. So talk about where Sammy's pop rated compared to Jay and Punk.
I think with Sammy, he had the backstage bit with Cody. He came out and they immediately went to commercial, and I think it was good. I think I'm going to rate Jay first, and then Sammy and Punk kind of in the second tier. But as the match went on, I mean, he's got that crowd in the palm of his hand. He can do no wrong. The kick out at one, just the whole place came
sitting
unglued.
Up, yeah.
And even, WrestleTick said 8,100, the upper bowl was tarped off except from across from the hard cam. But the photos I took, I mean, it looked like an electric crowd. I still question why they booked both Raw tonight and NXT tomorrow night. Originally at the same building, and they moved it to the Factory, which is more of a concert facility. So it'll be interesting to see how that looks on TV. But yes, Sammy, those sing-along songs really get the crowd going, and just his performance against Gunther being dominant really just kind of was the best action of the night.
Besides Breaker, did the crowd go against the presentation of the axe cheering a heel or booing a babyface any other time in the show?
No, I don't think so. I think they were all in line with what they were doing. And even, we've talked about before, the break in the action, especially, commercial breaks before the match. And same thing, they did the sign cam and the DX pose, but then they just did. I thought it was stupid when they did it, but it was the universe cam, and it just turned into a big dance party in the whole arena, and everyone was having fun, and they were showing people dancing on the video. I'm like, okay, they know how to keep the action going even during commercial.
So, talk about the transition to the second taping, and did it seem like they were taping in like real time, live to tape, or was it just kind of bang, 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 trying to get through stuff, and then in post production they'll spread things out and edit?
It was interesting because I only noticed that they mentioned it was a double taping twice. After, quote unquote, the lights went out after the first show, they did mention stay tuned for another appearance of the undisputed champion Cody Rhodes and some of the matches. But even during the second taping that we stayed, 45 minutes to an hour through, it wasn't bang, bang, bang. It was almost kind of live to tape with, if you think a commercial lasts 3 minutes, because they still showed the documentary commercials that they do during breaks, and it wasn't just, okay, I'm going to film an hour and space it out to 2.
I guess by the time you left, it was a little over 3 hours in to the show. Did anybody leave at that point? Because they advertised that Cody was going to be there. Like were they working to keep people in their seats, or was there any sense? Yeah, we're kind of pushing it once we get past 3 hours. I mean, you left. Were other people leaving?
No, I think I saw a couple of people leave during what was quote unquote the end of the first show, but mostly people stayed. I think finally people caught on. Hey, we're taping another 2 hours. We saw Jade and Bianca against Io and Kairi
Kyrie.
Sane. Great match. I mean, I think they held people's attention during what we saw. I'm like, oh, it's kind of late. Let's beat the traffic. Let's get the Uber now.
What was the match or matches you knew you were missing out on that were advertised?
I think we saw them because it was damage control against Jade and Bianca. Then they advertised
Breaker and Kofi.
Breaker and Kofi.
Yeah.
When we were walking out, we heard Liv's music, and they did the opening promo made you think that it would be a weird tag match with Liv. I'm sorry, not Liv. With Rhea and Tiffany against Liv and Raquel.
That would be weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They had all 4 of them were in the opening segment, and when we left, like I said, it was Rhea's music starting. So we're like,
how did they present Tiffany in that context? That seems strange to me.
She came out. Rhea was calling out Raquel and Liv. Tiffany came out, which popped Ferris. He had his Tiffy shirt on. But she pretty much just said, stay out of Nia's business, because they have the champ versus champ match coming up at Crown Jewel.
Yeah.
And then as they were kind of jaw-jacking back and forth, Liv and Raquel came out and attacked them both. And I did see earlier that Nia was in St. Louis, so maybe it was going to set something up for the Nia Liv match at Crown Jewel. But yeah, it was definitely wasn't expecting Tiffany.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was good.
Yeah, so I'm sure spoilers will get out online. So anyone who's trying to piece this all together, will look for that and get it up on PWTorch.com too. You can probably seek it out in a lot of places in terms of the full results and what resulted from it. What else, Jason, happened at the taping that you can go ahead with spoilers on if you remember anything else? I mean, it's a 2-hour show. You already talked about a couple of the matches. So
yeah, main event. first match was in progress when we got there. I'm pretty sure it was Blair Davenport wrestling someone. I don't know. And then Julius Creed wrestled, and then two of the NXT guys, Tavon Heights and Brooks Jensen. All good matches. Tavon Heights was really over with the crowd. I'm not sure. It might have been, who's Jade's husband, Brandon
Montez.
Phillips. After
sorry.
After Jade's match, she came over and kissed someone in the front row. I'm like, oh, that's probably the Cincinnati Reds guy.
Mhm.
But like I said, just a really good experience. They know what they're doing. The kids just, like I said, I know we talk a lot about Jay Uso, just so over with the crowd. I'm sure he's still on a lot of those foam hands. But yeah, just a really good time.
The chants during Gunther when they were chanting "Let's go, Sammy," I think it was, as opposed to "This is awesome," warmed my heart. I'm all for, or I guess you're just chanting "Sammy, Sammy," and I love that because when you're chanting "This is awesome," you're not into who's winning and losing. You're just evaluating the match like you're watching a movie and you're critiquing the directing and the acting. You're not actually absorbed in the story. Then I know it's just sort of a habit and people don't put a lot of thought into it. But when you get the crowd, given the inertia and tradition of just chanting "This is awesome" anytime a match is good, and they're chanting for the babyface against the heel, that's next level success. "This is awesome" chant isn't bad. I mean, obviously it's a crowd engaged in what's happening, but it's not the top level compliment for wrestlers. And I thought that was, noteworthy. And it goes to what you're saying, Jason, that they just they've got these big crowds. I mean, almost in the palm of their hands in a way that they just haven't at any time that I can remember for WWE this uniformly for decades.
Yeah, I was really encouraged by that. Then I turned my ear the other way and I heard a bunch of Goldberg chants. I'm like,
Don't ruin it.
I think it's good that people are very immersed in the results. I think one of the drawbacks, and again, I do not like the "This is awesome" chant. Probably the only chant I dislike more is "Fight Forever," because I want them to fight forever. I have to eventually.
Yes.
But the great thing for WWE right now is that people are invested in a result. Wins and losses matter. They may not have records or are kept, but people want to see certain people win. It makes them feel happy. I mean, I didn't watch the Raw where Jey Uso won the title, but all the social media buzz could not be ignored, and people were cheering for him because of the accomplishment. And that show today with Sami Zayn, they wanted him to win the title. They didn't want him and Gunther to have a match of a certain star level.
Jason, was there any booing of anything having to do with the Saudi Arabia title?
No, that they were pretty quick on that. They showed the video, but I couldn't pick anything up. No.
Yeah. Chris, is there anything you want to ask Jason about his experience tonight that I haven't covered in my questions?
Yeah, the one thing I noticed was Xavier Woods was getting booed during his match with Jey Uso. Was that evident, or is that just what I heard?
That was very evident. I think people were picking up of what they're leading to possibly, but at the same time, it's going to be hard for any babyface to get cheered against Jey. So I know his little boo, yay, going back and forth, but I think it just talks about, the testament of Jey connecting with the crowd, and no one wants to see him lose. But they were definitely, and even, Xavier's like, "Why are you booing me? Why are you booing me?" And they're like, "Yeah, we know why we're booing you."
Go ahead, Chris. Yeah.
My only one other question was there? It didn't seem to be there of being any sort of reaction to the women's match. I don't know if that also was evident in the arena.
I went to the bathroom. when I came back and they went to the finish, there was some reaction, but I think it was a cold match. It wasn't advertised. Unfortunately, they're not over where they want them, and it was just, we have a 10-woman tag.
Mm-hmm. Was there any reaction to Miz being on the video screen when he was interacting with Karrion Kross and R-Truth? Were people into that or groaning or ignoring it that you
No,
noticed?
yeah, no, they were into it, and then spoiler alert,
Mhm.
Miz and R-Truth then had a match in the second taping, and Miz got heavy heat from the crowd. So slotted right, he's gonna get booed, and um,
How'd the match go? Who won? How long it go? How long did it last? Was it good?
it was 30 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah. So Final Testament came out. Miz looked at them. Truth rolled him up, got the 3 count. Truth tried to hug Miz. Miz is like, "What are you doing?" Hug the ref. Then
Uh,
started to leave. AOP threw him back in the ring, and Miz gave him the skull crushing finale, and then really got some heat from the crowd.
do you think R-Truth next week will know that Miz is no longer his friend and tag partner, or will he think it's a misunderstanding? What's your prediction, Jason?
Well, originally he told Miz, "Hey, remember, I'm not in Judgment Day anymore." So
Yep.
I don't think. I mean, it's a fun gag.
Yeah.
I mean, they were on the TV for less than a few minutes for each episode. I can live with that.
Yeah.
I get a joke out of it every now and then.
Yeah. Very good. Jason, anything else you want to add before we let you go?
No, I absolutely appreciate the time, Wade. Chris,
Thank
I think
you.
this is the first time we've talked.
Yeah.
Appreciate all you do for the Torch, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you both very soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Jason.
Wade.
Yeah.
Talk to you
Appreciate
soon.
you taking time. Yep. Awesome. All right. Chris, is there anything else that you want to bring up from the show? I already threw you on that. We're waiting for Jason, but anything else?
I guess we didn't talk much. Well, one other thing. I thought they made Pete Dunne look really bad by losing a match. He zip-tied Sheamus.
Yeah, that's true.
And Sheamus still beat him. That's almost like, I know a different era of wrestling, but that's almost like territories you're leaving the company because we're going to bury you on the way out. That was...
Yeah, it's tough losing. It's tough losing to someone with their hands like tied behind their back, especially when you tie their hands behind their back.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as the main event went, there's some conversation in the chat room about this. Saiti said, I enjoyed the main event tonight. It felt like Gunther versus the Zandertaker because of his sit-up. Walter Sams. Oh, wait. Let's see. Derek had something to say first. Derek says, Punk is to the special attraction phase of his career. I'd follow the Drew Punk template going forward for Punk. Make sure all his matches get significant build to be important. And I do get that sense. Like, they're probably not, I don't know what the deal was that he signed in terms of how many matches he wrestled and if there were, you have to be in your best behavior or else we cut you after a year or something like that. I mean, who knows? But if it's limited matches or not, it's probably smart to do limited matches. I don't think Punk, Chris, should be on TV just wrestling matches like Sheamus. He should be treated as a special attraction. I think Derek is right.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the way you get the most out of him due to his injury record, as well as, milking the fact that he's been gone for so long. He still feels kind of new and fresh. There are a lot of opponents for him to have. The more matches he have, the quicker that kind of evaporates.
And then Derek also said, I enjoyed the Punk transition to the Seth promo, followed by the Jay entrance. It highlighted 3 distinct baby faces who may cross paths in the future. And let's see, someone else commented. The match didn't have to be acrobatic to be a spot fest. It looked planned out. Nothing special, and its predictability made it less interesting. How many times can you be amused by chops? That's from Walter Sams in the chat. What did you think, Chris, of the quality of the match with Sammy and Gunther? The pace was kind of deliberate, and it is chop heavy. It's kind of pushing it for me, to be honest, a little bit. I thought it was a good match, but I don't want Gunther to be, a guy who just his gimmick is he just kind of methodically throws chops for a long time before we get to other things. What do you think?
I thought it was all right. I think part of the problem mentally is that this match is so soon after their WrestleMania match, and it's just not going to be as good as that one. Yeah. And so I think in their mind, thinking, how can we have a good match, but we're not going to exceed that one. I thought it was fine for what it was. I think the key thing for me when we do our shows on Wrestling Coast to Coast, quick plug, the thing for me that I always leave with is the finish and the story and how that can maybe make up for what happened before. And I think the story of the fighting Sami Zayn, who could only do so much, I think really kind of was the key story for the match and is what fans will take away from it.
And then finally, Ashley in the chat says, so thankful for wrestling tonight in this post-show to distract from this Hurricane Milton business. So thank you guys for the show. I'm intrigued with the tone Punk took. It looks like Seth and Punk from Mania. Wish everybody good luck. I know Javier was preparing. He's in the, in Florida. It just sounds like an awful, awful hurricane coming up. I have heard of Category 5 hurricanes. Donald Trump earlier today said he never heard of that. I don't know how that's possible. That was just weird, but he's getting weirder by the day. Copyright Tim Walz. But yeah, I mean, all the lies about FEMA funding, I don't know. I don't want to get too political. I don't on the show much, but it's just shameful, and he doesn't deserve anyone's vote given the lies he's putting out there. Just blatant, easily disproven lies when lives are on the line in hurricane, with a hurricane in progress and another one coming. It's just disgraceful. And yeah, so I don't know.
I concur.
Yeah. I mean, I see, 6 reasons a day that I think it's irresponsible and shameful to support him. And I'm not scared. I'm not shy to be on record about that. I think if you're not going to vote for Kamala Harris. That's my official endorsement here. And I've been convinced of that since the whole Duke student thing, the Duke controversy, that he never withdrew when he wanted people to be executed or later exonerated, and they were black. And then the whole Obama thing about questioning whether he was really an American and from here. He disqualified himself very early on, and he's done so on a virtually daily basis for 9 years. And so go ahead, Chris.
I'll put it this way: wrestling contest. So 2013, there's 6 of us that are very close. 3 of us are involved with the Torch, and we really wanted to go to the WWF Hall of Fame. My parents schooled me on Bob Backlund. They were putting in Mick Foley, Booker T, and of course Bruno Sammartino. And then we found out that Donald Trump was getting inducted. We refused to go to the WWE Hall of Fame in Madison Square Garden 2013. If we didn't want him to be a WWE Hall of Famer, certainly not rooting for him for president.
No.
I think that my career is in government, and I think it's very important for government to be honest with the people, especially the lives that are affected, especially in the states affected by the hurricane. They need a federal government that will assist them, not pretend their problems don't exist.
Very well put. And I was just thinking yesterday, it's almost like there's this big troll going on where like some higher power created the least qualified, most offensive, horrible human being possible, and see if people would still vote for him. And we still got 47% of the people either buying into his con, listening to the wrong media, or I don't even know what. I don't get it. I'm not shy about it. This isn't like new. I mean, I'm on my Twitter feed is full of retweets of information that I consider reliable on this. And Greg Parrish says stick to wrestling, but we talk NFL. We're going to talk politics. We're going to do what we want on this show. You can watch or not watch, but we're righting you wrong about Trump. He's an awful human being who's not worthy of anyone's votes, and there's no rationalization to vote for somebody who's as truly, truly, truly awful and incompetent. And I just think if Dick Cheney's saying it, and almost everybody who was in the military at a high level who worked around him said he shouldn't be in charge of foreign policy. And I mean, it's just one really credible person with a whole range of diverse views saying this guy's not qualified for president. I don't get why people are still sticking with him. And there's so much on the line right now. I would feel bad not speaking up and saying it. And this hurricane thing is just the latest, and it's just shameful and inexcusable.
I'll put it this way. I will, if we didn't have the Electoral College, this wouldn't be an issue because Vice President Harris would get more votes. And I've been not a fan or have not liked the Electoral College about as long as you've been running the Torch. I learned about it during the 1988 presidential election.
And it was originally just protecting landowners by people say, oh, it's because you don't want the, small states to be ignored. But it's like 44 states are being ignored. You know what I mean? Like it just, so yeah.
You're also not counting votes because, Donald Trump will get more votes in California than he will get in several states. But because of the way we divide the Electoral College, California is not seen as a Republican state, though more Republicans will vote. I just read a book called White Rural Rage, which I thought was very interesting, about how a lot of folks in those areas are not voting. They could be a very powerful group, but they're voting for politicians that don't help their interests. They struggle with healthcare, things like infant mortality. They don't have great schools because they vote for people that don't support them. And these hurricanes are a great example. The Republicans in the House did not fund FEMA, federal emergency assistance, and that's who helps people in hurricanes. So,
yeah, and Greg Parrish says, the thing about Trump is he's awful, but so is Kamala. It never gets said. It gets said, and it's bullshit. She's not. I'm sorry. She's not horrible. And she's going to protect democracy. And the thing that my grandfather took a bullet for in World War II and was a prisoner of war, which is defending democracy against people who talk about inferior genes and people who aren't white. And I'm sorry, you don't have my support if you're going to vote for somebody who says that. And he said that today. My grandpa took a bullet in World War II to protect what this country stands for. Donald Trump doesn't deserve your vote. He's damaged. I mean, he's a malignant narcissist. He can't help it. But I mean, come on. Like, seriously, you couldn't design a less qualified, worse human being to be asking for your vote for president. And I stand by that, and I believe it firmly. And if that is news to you, expand your media consumption, because you're being lied to by a bunch of marks, or they're treating you like a bunch of marks, and you're being lied to. And I say that with certitude, Chris, certitude.
No, I get it. I read a lot of books or audiobooks, and I just read a book about Reconstruction, which is in the 1870s. And Ulysses S. Grant was president, the 18th president of the United States, and the amount of misinformation that was going on, not with Twitter, not with Instagram, whatever, but it's the same premise. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see me, and I just put up a photo last week of when I got to meet President Jimmy Carter, who I'm a huge fan of, in 2019. So you can see my family and see, these kind of things are important to me.
When I was in grade school, I had to choose between Ford and Carter, like on a little, like kids magazine, like I don't know if it's kindergarten, I think. And I was like, I voted for Jimmy Carter on the little forum, and the teacher asked why, and I said, well, because he had a nice smile. So that was my reason. I didn't know anything. I just, Jimmy was a great post-president. But I will say this, because Greg Parrish said she's accomplished nothing as a career politician. She's vice president. She is a senator. She was a prosecutor. And I think if you blindly saw her resume, but you said it was a white man, a handsome white man, Greg, I think you would say it's one of the most qualified people to be president we've seen in your lifetime. I don't know how old you are. Resume-wise, kicks Bill Clinton's ass, kicks George Bush's ass, kicks Barack Obama's ass. I mean, in terms of bullet point resume items and what she's accomplished, come on. That's just a lame talking point from someone who's trying to get you to vote for a fascist, incompetent jerk who does not deserve your vote.
Because you can talk about what you think about her issues, disagree or whatever, that's fine. But you have Trump, who's elected president of any elected office. You have J.D. Vance, who is in his first elected office as senator from Ohio, which is very unfortunate because I live in Ohio. But neither of them ran for this office with any of the qualifications, resume, or experience that she has. So if you don't want to agree with her on the issues, if you think it's great to tax rich people while your taxes go up, that's fine. I'm not rich enough for my taxes to I don't want my taxes to go up for rich people to go up. But if that's what you're all about, and you think that's fine, I guess that's your choice. But you realize that there are a lot of people who don't feel that way for various reasons. And again,
this just honestly, earlier, just a couple days ago, it came out last week that the whole thing about orchestrating the whole lead up to January 6th. And it's fascinating to read that and jarring. And if he gets a second chance, there's, this could be the last election that you have any semblance of a legitimate vote in. I mean, I don't say that with hyperbole. I mean, it's happened in other countries. This is the highest stakes by far. And if you're voting over something happening in the Middle East, which is an issue that's been a problem and will continue to be a problem, and it is a deservedly hot button issue, but there's something. There's issues that are going to be around in 2 years and 4 years and 6 years and 8 years, but let's make sure we can vote on those issues in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, and 8 years by not putting someone back in office who tried to overthrow the last election, which is documented and indisputably true, unless you're listening to people who are treating you like a mark. Walter Sam says, Dick Cheney, architect of Middle East wars, is a great source of truth. It's not a matter of agreeing with almost anything Dick Cheney has done in his political career, but he's right that it makes sense to vote for Kamala if you want to be able to vote for issues you care about 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 years from now. So anyway, Troy says, I'd 100% listen to an NFL and political podcast hosted by Wade and Chris. Yes. So, and by the way, Greg says, what has she done positively? She's been in charge for 8 years. Are we any better off? Yes. President Biden has had one of the most successful 4 years of a president in history. I mean, when you look at the charts of how other countries came out of COVID and what his policies did to bring us out of it, and now inflation, we didn't have a recession. Everyone was predicting a recession. His policy, I'm not saying Kamala had a ton to do with it. Vice presidents don't have a ton to do with it. I mean, they're VPs for other reasons, but if your life's not... Yeah, there you go. Yes. Yep. And I won't revisit my thoughts on that at the time, although I thought George Bush was so thinly qualified. I was actually kind of, well, maybe George or maybe Dick Cheney will bring at least some experience to it, but then, a lot of things happened. But honestly, the Biden, once we get past the heated politics of the moment, historians are going to give proper credit to what Biden has accomplished in this presidency.
The book I read, again, if you go to my Twitter, Mind of Maitland, I don't tweet that often, but I did tweet. We did some cupcakes for Jimmy Carter's 100th birthday on October 1st and put up the photo that me and my wife and my first daughter took with him at the Maranatha Baptist Church in Plains, Georgia, very small town, great peanuts. The book also said that his presidency was looked at better in time. First senator to endorse him was Joe Biden. And I think the thing with Trump that people have to remember is Trump had the job before and didn't do it well. So if you talk about what Harris and Biden have done and not done, that's one thing. But when you talk about the economy, the lack of response to COVID, allows several other issues that I won't bore you all with here. Mm-hmm. He did the job poorly in his previous run at it. And I compared it to a losing coach who you rehire because, hey, I don't know, maybe we'll get him better players. It's like he can't coach the team. He tried before. He's a bad coach. Don't put him back in the hot seat.
JC Scooby says, I live in Ohio. JD Vance is a disgrace to Ohio. Greg Parrish, who we're having a talk with, we're disagreeing about politics. I won't put his quote on the screen, but he said about Biden, he can't speak a complete thought. And then he says, go F yourself. So you've represented your side well, Greg. I mean, keep it classy. It's just, come on, really? I mean, so Biden has obviously he's older and he's having less trouble speaking. And we're all concerned that his policies are good. I watched him give a amazing off the cuff, teleprompter speech at the NATO conference. And when he's in his comfort zone, he can still talk, but he's got a stuttering issue. He has his whole life. And it took a lot of work to control it. There's a really touching video of him talking to a kid with a stuttering problem. That's worth looking up if you want to see what's in Biden's heart. But yeah, it's worse now. And we all cringe when if we support a lot of his policies and obviously see Trump as a catastrophe to future of the world. I mean, what's going on just for Ukraine's sake to not cave into Putin there's so many reasons to not even consider doing anything but doing whatever it takes to get a vote for Kamala, and not just not vote, but vote for Kamala. You have to do everything to keep Trump out of office a second time.
Especially if you're in certain states, because one thing I say about the Electoral College, I lived in New York. I voted for the Democratic nominee every time. And when I moved in 2017, people told me, oh, it's great, your vote will count. And my vote hasn't counted. So if you live in Pennsylvania, I have a lot of friends in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, I think Florida, North Carolina, Nevada, Georgia, there are a few other states. Get out there.
Yes.
On election day.
Yep. Thank you. And you know what? I mean, honestly, they're going to brag about how many votes there are. They're going to use how close the popular vote was. Every vote counts. Every vote is part of a final tally that shows up in the record books. And not voting or thinking your vote doesn't count because it isn't going to factor in the Electoral College because it's so red or so blue. Your vote still counts. It's part of the grand tally, and it's part of your duty. And people die in order to have the right to vote. You should vote every time.
Exactly. People died. People are denied the right to vote in several states. Yep. In Ohio, it's a standard that you check your registration, even though if you vote regularly, because they're trying to remove people from the rolls. I've always been someone who said their vote was very expensive. I voted in like a school board election a month after I turned 18.
Yeah,
voting's that important for me. And now I've made my again, I work in government. Have worked in government my entire career, so hence why I read all these books and whatever that's topic. But the right to vote is very important. For my family, it's very important. For my kids who can't vote, I'm voting for their future. I have 2 girls, so that's also very important to me.
Yeah.
So
and you're in this other thing. Your vote counts in the sense that when you vote, whatever your age, whatever your demographic, whatever boxes you check on the census, for all those things, if you quote your group, if you're part of a group and you vote in a higher proportion than others, you'll get more attention next time.
Yep.
Your issues will matter more. You say your vote doesn't count. They know you're voting. They know your demographic. They know what who you are essentially. And when those stats come out and go, oh, this group voted in big numbers, guess who the politicians are going to pay attention to next time around? You.
It's why college isn't free. I always tell young people, not people I work with because they're obviously in my line of work, but if young people voted, college would be free because you would be seen as an important constituency. And that's why I remember when I was in my 20s, why are things always going for seniors? It's because they vote.
That's right. Yep. And I mean, and by the way, if anyone's nodding along or shaking their head and shaking their fist at this, if you're on Twitter X with the weirdo Elon Musk who's gone off the deep end, follow me
at the Steeler game, by the way.
Oh god. At the Wade Keller and at the Wade Keller, and I tweet a lot. I retweet a lot about politics. And honestly, if you want to know where my views come from, and I think I tweet people who have credible articles and have a lot of different approaches to looking at the future of the country and stuff. But I think you'll be more informed reading my retweets than you will certain media sources and TikTok and whatever you get fed on algorithms or whatever cable network you're watching. I've curated a lot of people I follow that I think are credible. And if you are curious to learn more, honestly, and you're like, wait, this is news to me because my friends say this, or I saw this on TikTok or Instagram or Fox News or CNN, whatever it is, or a podcast with Joe Rogan and all the nonsense he spews. Follow my Twitter feed and catch up on it because there's a lot of good information. There's a lot of good information from other people on there that I retweet for people who are curious about, kind of staying informed on the day-to-day stuff. But honestly, just what Trump said about Obama and the whole birtherism stuff, just did that. Okay, not going to vote for the guy because of that. Like, why are we still talking 9 years later? That was disqualifying. And he doesn't deserve your vote just for that. And then he did like 6 things today, or at least so far this week. Also, I believe Rob Reiner was on earlier, and he was like, it's insane this race is close. It's insane. It's like every day you wake up and you're like, how is this guy still getting votes? I mean,
well, that says a lot about the people, the people who support him. My whole theory with Trump, if we go back to Subway, was, again, living in New York, someone, you're used to people maybe saying stuff, yelling and screaming in the subway or whatever, or in Central Park. But when people listen to him, that means they agree. I think I hope for a world future. Again, I have 2 young kids. My oldest is about to turn 6, and 2 soon to be 3-year-old in February. And I hope for a world that's better for them, especially as biracial girls living in America. People fought to make the life better for me. As a black man, again, I always tell people, I need a Supreme Court decision for me to marry my wife. We got married in Kentucky. When my parents got married, it was not legal. My parents got married in 1966. It was not legal for my wife and I to get married in Kentucky at that time. And then, Supreme Court decision allowed that to happen. So government's really important. It affects your life more in ways that you don't imagine because we don't focus on it a lot. And so you need to be really involved and make sure that you put people in there who have your best interest at heart and don't, as Governor Walz, who I love, by the way. My wife and I joke we should move to Minnesota because of him. But don't vote for someone whose main policy is to demean others, but who's focused on uplifting everyone. And I think it's very clear in this election, there's one group of folks who are looking to uplift and one group of folks who are looking to demean. Even in the case of J.D. Vance, his own constituents about 50 minutes from where I live, which are lies. And to me, that's horrible to do as a lie anyway, but lie about people you represent because you think it'll make other people feel better. And again, I'm a first-generation American son of immigrants, so that is annoying on another level. But those are the people who are running on that ticket, people who are willing to use their own constituents, who are willing to use lies to better themselves, as opposed to other people who are going to give you a child tax credit, a credit to buy a home, and make things more affordable.
And don't need to lie about aid being given to hurricane victims while a hurricane is going on that can cost people lives, and didn't try to overthrow an election last time, the election results, and didn't say, wasn't nonchalant and non-caring about his vice president potentially being killed. And I mean, it's just saying John McCain wasn't a hero because he got shot down. I mean, it's just the lies, the lie. And by the way, this is the key to Trump. Everything he says, I'm almost literally everything he says is a projection of what he's insecure about himself. Not everybody knows the psychological term projection. Projection means you say something about somebody else before they can say it about you because you're insecure that it's true about you. And like low IQ Kamala, Trump's got low IQ. He's an idiot. He's a moron. I mean, it's just like it's amazing what a con job he's doing on people and how successful it's been because of the TV series. And I mean, obviously politicians are imperfect, and the way that people felt left out, suddenly there was somebody who seemed like he was talking to them. They felt they were being left behind. And, he told Dutch Mantel, bring this back to wrestling with the whole Jack Swagger, Uncle Zeb thing. And at WrestleMania, he was there, and he's like, Dutch Mantel told me the story. He's like, yeah, Trump came up to me and was really intrigued with what he said about immigrants. And it was it seemed to inspire Trump's whole, his whole thing about making all these immigrants the bad guys that you should be scared of, the boogeymen that are, coming to get you and hurting the economy. And I mean, it's not that immigration is a tough issue. I mean, it's a difficult issue, and it hasn't been handled perfectly. But the talking about these people as vermin and inferior because of their genes, and then just lying about the numbers, and I mean, it's astounding. I mean, it's just daily he's saying things that if you listen to him and you think, wait, he's saying that because he's insecure that that's true about him, or he's saying it before it can be said about him. It's amazing what a high percentage of things that he says are in that category. I mean, when you look at what he says through that lens, unless he's just ranting about, water pressure in showers and, just going off on the deep end on, just weird, quirky things. But it's amazing. Anyway, I hope we're in a good spot, but vote, people, and vote for Kamala, because our country's future genuinely depends on it. And so does peace in Europe. And you can say, well, we're not going to go into wars. Well, the way to not go into wars is let Ukrainians fight for themselves and fund them and stop Putin before things get worse. So it's just amazing. It feels good to vent. And Chris, you're good to be here with me. And I know there's people, this is bad for business because 40% of voters say you're going to vote for Trump. Well, what am I going to do? I think this issue is more important than me staying in business. Honestly, and I can't not speak out. That's why I retweet all the time. I'm not scared to make my views clear. And I don't want to sit back. I wouldn't say this about Obama and Romney. It's like, that's politics. This is literally the future of democracy and world order, and mass camps for people who are just rounded up because they're not white. I mean, it's crazy talk what Project 2025 wants to do, and what JD Vance and Trump are saying to appeal to an electorate that, I don't know, they're buying a bunch of. Anyway, Chris,
yeah. I mean, as someone who, again, I'm a 43-year-old Black man growing up in America, so I know that I've had a different circumstance than a lot of people. Yeah. And again, married, my wife is white. I have 2 biracial kids, and all those things that come together. We have a beautiful life in America, a beautiful life in Columbus, Ohio. Very happy to live here, and really enjoyed, even if we don't move to Minnesota. But I think that's kind of the thing, as someone that's always been, again, I joke about, I was watching WrestleMania 3 and Starrcade and reading about the election. That's kind of how I was and kind of have always been.
Wow. Yep.
I've spent a lot of time. Again, this has been my career. I went to grad school for it, so I focus on it more than the average person, and I understand that I have a different perspective because it's something that I focus on daily on many different levels, not just federal, but state and local, depending on what I was doing on my career. And yeah, this is different than other people that I may not have agreed with their policies, because they are saying that they will not accept the results, and that throws the entire chaos of what our country is supposed to be. And again, there are a lot of faults in what our country has been. It puts the entire thing in danger, and that's kind of not the point of a democracy. Now, again, I think the one thing this has established is that there are people who do not want a democracy. They
think they don't till they're living in one that isn't.
They want their way, and however their way works. But then again, your way today may not be your way tomorrow. And I think also we as a society have to think about other people. I think definitely as a dad of girls, I definitely have to think about that. As a loving husband of soon to be 10 years, son, friend, whatever, brother, think about other people. And I think we have to expand our minds to not focus on people who are trying to demonize others, trying to make certain people feel the enemy, especially, and this is like, again, I grew up in New York. It's a melting pot country of all different types of people. We definitely want to deal with problems, but don't demonize people. It's just not right.
Yeah. And I mean, I almost just want to say we can probably just end there, but I mean, it is it's serious, and it's, we're in the final stretch here, and register to vote for Kamala, no matter what state you're in, make it a definitive, overwhelming. They underestimated the youth vote, and get out there and let's make this so it isn't something where we're dealing with, 3 months of chaos behind the scenes with a bunch of, I mean, how the number of judges who listen to all the evidence and jury, and I mean, this whole thing about election interference last time, it's the big lie. I mean, on Earth One, we call it the big lie. It is a lie from a damaged ego, from a malignant narcissist who has a big megaphone, and there's just nothing to it. I mean, this idea that like non-residents who are scared every day they're going to be deported are going to go try to figure out how to beat the system by impersonating a resident who's registered to vote just to have one vote and risk a felony and being jailed or kicked out of the country. How many people do you think are sitting around? I mean, think about just how stupid that is for a second. That the MAGA world is trying to sell you on the idea that a bunch of people who every day are scared they're going to be kicked out of this country because they don't have papers, that they're going to vote in mass numbers. In what states and in what situation do you think that they're going to go, let me figure out where a polling place is, and I can figure out someone who isn't going to vote, who's registered, and then impersonate them and know their name, be able to write their signature down and put at risk me committing a felony and being kicked out of the country? You think that's happening on a mass scale? Like, think about just the what you're being shoveled. That makes no sense.
But
sense.
It's fear mongering. It's fear of the unknown, and that's really the issue, that a lot of people are very afraid of the other. They always say things about people in big cities, people never been there, people in certain states never been there. I have the blessing. My wife's from rural Kentucky, so I've been in rural Kentucky, and I love it there. Her family's great, and people I've met there are great, but I have a different perspective. I mean, but like I said, I've been in more rural towns than a lot of people have been in big cities. But the thought process is there's a faraway city over there. These people are, they have all these problems, and they're causing all these problems for you. And again, the thing I always say to anyone who wants to knock Biden and Harris is, again, what did Trump do while he was president that made your life better, other than complaining about others? Because their lives were not better. The economy was worse when he left office than it is now. Gas prices.
No matter how good Biden did or how poorly Biden did, MAGA world was going to say he was a bad president. So you have to get past the fact that a bunch of people are amplifying that, who want their taxes lowered because they see you as a mark who will go vote against your better interests. And that's what they're doing. They're manipulating you, and they're very skilled at it. Biden ended up having an imperfect, as every president is, but a really successful economic presidency. I mean, just look up the graph of all these other European countries and how they've come out of COVID versus the United States. What we did, what Bidenomics did, all the infrastructure bill, all the things that Biden pushed, it led to us avoiding what economists said a few years ago was a virtually inevitable recession. And inflation was because there were shortages during COVID. When there are fewer things available, the price goes up for them. That's just basic day one economics class. The whole world experienced inflation, and it started under Trump and continued under Biden and Kamala as VP. And it is gone. And it's gone faster than it was in every other European country that also experienced those shortages. And where it's not gone, it's because, and it's proven. I mean, it's like the evidence is out there. Corporations, once the rates went up because of inflation, there's like, oh, people are used to paying this. Let's increase our profits and not lower prices. I mean, just understand what a president can do and can't do, and what a VP can and can't do. And the fact is inflation was a result. It's basic, so simple. And you're not going to learn about it in people who are trying to trick you into voting against your better interest to get their tax rates lowered so they can have more yachts. But Biden's policies got us out of inflation that wasn't his fault. That was an inevitable result, no matter who got elected and was president, of supply shortages during COVID. And it happened all over the world with all kinds of people in different power, with different political persuasions. It happened everywhere. It wasn't a Biden thing. It wasn't a Trump thing.
I think the Harris strategy, she was on the Call My Daddy podcast, a podcast that I do not listen to, but it's very popular. And I think that's kind of one of the things that Biden and Obama did, is reaching out to voters who have not voted previously, especially younger people.
Yep.
I think I was telling one of my colleagues who are in their 20s about my first presidential election, which was 2000, in which the run up to that was, oh, Gore and Bush, they're the same, because, you know, Gore is vice president and Bush was governor and their dads were senators. And, you know, obviously, if you're into, we're having a big hurricane hit, and, you know, we didn't have a climate change policy for 12 years in the United States. Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the White House, and Ronald Reagan took them down. So that was what people were told at the time, back in 2000. And obviously that was not the case. And so the decisions we make as a country will set us in a certain direction. Again, the two presidential libraries I've been to, Jimmy Carter's in Atlanta and Lyndon Johnson in Austin, Texas, because those are my two favorite post presidents. Lyndon Johnson was a nutcase, but his policies and programs were really helpful, especially for someone that looks like me. And then Jimmy Carter, I just love as a human being, hence why I read all these books by him. But I think what we need to do is look at what, you know, not get into rhetoric and hyperbole and see the kind of results that you talk about. Unfortunately, there are voters who are not focused on that. But again, Trump didn't make your life better. How much was the gas you got this today? You know, even that's not controlled by the president.
That's the thing. I mean, like, you're right that gas prices aren't bad, but it's like, that's not a presidential thing. It's just something that people vote on, even though it's largely disconnected from presidential policy.
Yeah. But just, you know, and that's part of it too. Like, the gas is cheaper, but that's affected by other things. But again, that's kind of the problem with the representative government, is that we're only supposed to have so much. You're supposed to allow other people. We're supposed to send people to do the work, and therefore the voter doesn't get all the information. But it's very important the next few days. And to be honest, I'm glad we talked about this instead of talking about the Jets-Vikings game.
Well, we did talk about that, just not. Yeah. That was you know, two hours ago. Marco Rubio posts just another fake jobs report out from Biden-Harris government today. They're trying to, like, there are just things that are objectively true, and they are shamelessly just disputing anything that's been accepted by all politicians forever when it doesn't fit their narrative that Biden's been a bad president for the economy. And, you know, I mean, this is like George Orwell's 1984. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. And that's what they're doing. They're asking you to be a big enough mark to vote against your interests and to be scared of boogeymen that they inflate. You know, it's, the caravan of the migrants and then the immigrants. And then all of a sudden the election happens and then they don't talk about it anymore on that same news channel. Did it go away? No, it just wasn't in their interest to scare you into voting red.
Like my brother-in-law lives in Kentucky, saw him over the weekend, told me about people that he knows talking about Democrats are going to take the guns away. And I said, we've had Democratic presidents, Clinton, Biden, Obama, Democratic legislature. They didn't take the guns away. There's always this kind of excuse about this unknown fear that hasn't happened, even when the people that you are against are in control. And but again, I think a lot of people work on the tail of what they don't like as opposed to what they like. And again, you know, think about someone who's trying to be positive, do positive things for not only you, but people all around the country, as opposed to someone who's trying to demean others. Because the one thing I think people forget, that one day you will be demeaned. I mean, the people here complaining about immigrants, a lot of, you know, your ancestors were the immigrants people complained about in America not too long ago. We all can be the victims when someone chooses it to be us. So you should think about that as having a scope of true equity, true equality, because you don't want to be on the short end of the stick, and you don't know when your time will be.
That's exactly right. They talk about that in relation to World War II. You know, they come for there's who do they come for, and when are you on the list? Don't think you won't be. As far as the economy, Mark Zandi, who runs economy.com, he's a co-founder of that and host of Inside Economics, said the jobs report for September cements my view that the economy is about as good as it gets. The economy is creating lots of jobs across many industries, consistent with robust labor force growth and thus low and stable unemployment. The economy is at full employment, no more, no less. Wage growth is strong, and given big productivity gains, it is consistent with low and stable inflation. One could not paint a prettier picture of the job market and broader economy. Like, it's ridiculous on Earth One, where like actual facts matter, that anyone would be doing anything but celebrating what has happened while Biden's been president. You can say might have happened anyway. You could say that, but I think Biden's policies absolutely helped. And there's, the real GDP per capita growth among the G7 nations. The United States is far ahead of Italy's in second place and Japan's in third place. We're way ahead of them. We're way ahead of Canada and France and the United Kingdom. I mean, it's so, as Rob Reiner said, mind-boggling that this election is close. You couldn't design a more successful economic result from a 4 years of a president coming out of post-COVID, the inflation that was inevitable there and all the complications. You couldn't end up with a better economy. Nobody would have thought. I mean, the stock market, and not everybody's in the stock market, but if people are telling you this wasn't a good economy and it wasn't a good presidency when it comes to the economy, they're treating you like a mark. They're talking to you like you're a low information voter who will buy their self-interested bullshit. And
Rob Reiner would definitely know about a racist from Queens, which is
yes.
But the problem really is, in all honesty, is that the stuff that we're talking about is not always given to the average voter. That's why that book was so great that I read a few weeks ago. Yep. Is the people in these areas, and again, I talked to my in-laws about this and other people who live in these areas that I know, that they have been told these other things for decades about government, and a lot of the government dislike has come from post 60s when the government was expanded for other people. Government's bad. This bad. People who are in these individual areas are suffering. The rural hospitals are closing. The schools are contracting. The population is decreasing. But I will say, in inverse of what they said about the Democrats taking their guns, is when have the Republicans made your life better in those areas? Have they brought back the hospitals? Have they invested in the roads? Have they brought back the schools? Have they brought back jobs? They haven't. And I think those people, I don't want to demean them and say that they don't deserve support and they don't deserve programs. But if you look at it, the programs that actually support them have come from Democrats.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Republicans who take credit for policies that are the result of prior Democratic presidencies and Senate majorities is crazy. Lori Garrett, and by the way, you're covering the short-term self-interest of people and long-term, Chris, and also the decency issue, which I talk about going back to the lie about Obama and the birth certificate. I mean, just complete utter bullshit. I mean, just spoken by a racist who can't imagine a black guy being president. But then you have Lori Garrett, Pulitzer Prize winner, Peabody Awards, and a ton of credentials. She goes, let's be clear, Joe Biden has pulled off the U.S. economy out of hell, braved multiple potential calamities like the ILA strike, and will leave the White House in January having pulled off miracles. Every time Trump claims it's the worst economy he's ever seen, he's either lying or displaying a woeful lack of comprehension of Econ 101. I mean, it's just, if this is new information to you, you change your consumption of media, because these are facts. And there's a great Mark Cuban video out there too that Gene Albert brought up in the chat room, talking about inflation and why it happened in gas prices. And he's been a real articulate spokesperson about what's going on in the economy as somebody who knows money really well, and has been a brave spokesperson against Trump and for, frankly, reality. And yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, Trump got less votes than Biden in 2020. He got less votes than Hillary Clinton in 2016. I was actually at what should have been her victory party at the Jacob Javits Center, which is a long story for another time. But so Harris is going to get more votes, just because generally in the country we are supportive. The Democrat candidate has gotten more votes in the last several elections, with the exception of 2004. But we need the voter turnout to be what it is. We need people to, and a lot of people have been very happy with some Republicans who are, I don't agree with Liz Cheney on policy, but I can respect someone who says that I don't agree with Kamala Harris on policy, but this is not really, this actual election isn't really about policy.
It's not a policy election. It's save democracy and be decent. And don't vote for somebody who's a caricature of the worst possible human being possible to ask for your vote for president. I mean, it is I could not write a fiction book. No one could, of somebody so unfit for office and so depraved and incompetent and asking for, no one would publish the book. They'd say it's too crazy. No American would vote for this guy.
As well as having a vice presidential candidate who's younger than me, and Trump is 78, not the best of health. And that's something to keep in mind. J.D. Vance, someone who, it's funny, when I moved to Ohio, I had several people recommend The Hillbilly Elegy to me as a book. I did read it before I moved, and then I came to Columbus and realized how unpopular he was. He's someone who will say whatever needs to be said in the room that he thinks will make him popular, and that person being a heartbeat away from the presidency is also dangerous.
I totally. And 2 years and 1 day in, 25th Amendment gets kicked in, and then JD plans to run things for 10 years, and it's going to be a lot of other people pulling strings because of that guy's inexperience and whatever has caused him to align with these people. Steve Schmidt, high profile among many, many high profile Republicans who have jumped off, who are see Trump as a disgrace. It says Liz Cheney sees Trump clearly. He's more than a buffoon. He's a profound threat because though he's a clown, his genius is of the vicious variety. When vicious clowns gain power, their legacy is easy to predict. Disaster. It's what cruelty brings always.
Don't listen to, if you don't want to listen to Wade and I, listen to, Cheney or former
Paul Ryan,
who voted with Trump 80-90% of the time. All the people that worked for him, they know him better than you or I do, or anyone else does, and they say not to vote for him. So that's good enough for me.
Yeah. All right, Chris, it's been sort of therapeutic. I felt good to vent. We have more, by the way, we have more people watching and listening to us right now than we did 25 minutes ago. So we didn't try people like, oh, what, I just hope people think, we're two decent people and we're kind of educated. Honestly, I'll say this without hesitation. I think it's not my full-time job. There's things I don't know a lot about, but I think I'm pretty good at discerning media coverage and people who are speaking honestly and not just blatantly lying and you can kind of, and understanding people's motives. And it's just, it just isn't controversial for me to say. It just feels so obvious that Trump has disqualified himself from earning anybody's vote to run this country, be the most powerful person in the world. And there's no single issue that you might vote on in any other election that matters more than keeping him out of office again. And J.D. Vance would probably end up president during the 4 years. Trump is declining a lot in terms of how he speaks and his thought process. That's why he brags about, passing cognition tests, which by the way, are just meant to decide whether you can live alone or not. It's not like you're sharp and you're sharp as a 25-year-old graduate student. The things he brags about passing, it's hilarious, except for how scary it is. They're just tests that they give people to decide if they can still live independently. And he brags about passing those. And I don't know that he passed one now. He's definitely, the decline we've seen in the last couple of years is astounding, a lot more than Biden. Biden, obviously, he struggles when he talks. But go watch his NATO speech. Honestly, just like if you're like, well, what is Wade talking about? I watched him on interviews and he struggles to remember words and all that. It's like his mind is there. It's just his ability to articulate it has slowed down. But Muhammad Ali was still Muhammad Ali inside his head, even when he couldn't speak. It's like but it was the right move for him not to run, because he wouldn't have been able to have the energy and the vigor to go out and give these inspirational speeches that Kamala and Walz are doing to get young people to vote and everybody to vote. But yeah.
Yeah, anyway. I told Rich we're getting shoot Biden, because he's not.
Yes, I know. Yeah,
Biden is always someone. If you follow his political career,
yeah,
even when he was younger, he would like someone ask him a question, you would hear him go like kind of almost go off the cuff, and then like know to stop himself, because he's not supposed to say that. And that's even sometimes where the stutter comes in as well. But now he's just like, I don't care. This is my last go around. I'll say whatever I want.
And he doesn't want to sabotage Kamala, but he is absolutely less. He's having to edit himself less.
But I think, again, as someone who, again, people may want to look me up, something important, but like my career, again, I've been in government. I've worked with around a lot of elected officials, and I understand the importance of representative government and the fact that you send people to represent you. I also understand that just the way of our system, we do not give the average citizen who doesn't maybe spend extra time to read on these things all the information. It's just not how our American politics works. Maybe I wish it did. Maybe that's hard because people rather talk about anything other than this. But I think it's very important for voters to be informed, to be aware, and understand that like the people that you vote in matters. The politicians, whoever they are, will make changes, positive or negative for you. And it's very important that you exercise your right to vote, as well as just vote for people who will allow you to exercise the right for vote. As Wade mentioned, people have passed away fighting for that. People like me were not always given the right to vote in this country. People look like me. So that's why I take my vote very seriously. And I think everyone who's of voting age, legally registered now in those states that you still can, and take that step is very important. All elections are important, but this one in particular.
And nobody was more right-wing nutcase and disappointed a lot of friends of his who knew him than Glenn Jacobs-Kane. And he said few days ago, to my knowledge, FEMA, TEMA, nor anyone else is confiscating supplies. Please quit spreading these rumors, as they are counterproductive to response efforts. If everyone could maybe put aside the hate for a bit and pitch in to help, that would be great. That's Glenn Jacobs, Tennessee, MAGA, and now the lies, are catching up. The lies of the people he backs, they are catching up to him. And now he's out there saying, no, this is not true. What's going, all these just crazy conspiracy theories that people are buying into, on Facebook. Someone said Trump is lying so rampantly about hurricane for several reasons. He was an absolute failure at disaster relief, and he needs Biden and Herron to be remotely as awful as he was. And he needs his rubes to believe he can fly planes full of goodies for those who are loyal. But I mean, it is, it's just, it's appalling. What there's, North Carolina journalist, Trump is lying about what's happening here. Billy Ball, the people who are now feeling the actual real life effects of Trump's constant lies are now pushing back because it's affecting them and their loved ones. It's just this, yeah. I got the one other quote, Mike Rothschild, author and an author and journalist, says Republican officials in North Carolina are literally begging far-right influencers to stop shitposting conspiracy theories about FEMA stealing supplies, corpses stacking up, lithium heists, weather control, and the federal government abandoning them. I mean, they're literally begging people to stop saying that because people are dying because they're not believing FEMA's going to be there for them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of these states who vote, overwhelmingly Republican are the ones who actually receive more federal aid than they give in taxes in versus cities, states that give more don't receive as much, which is fine. I mean, we're supposed to be United States of America, right? But again, the whole purpose of the federal government is there to help you. We have I was talking to one of my co-workers about Ruby Bridges, who had to get escorted to school in a black and white photo. She just turned 70. She has an Instagram account, and there are 32 senators older than her. So we're not too far away from the federal government having to escort people to school. But we need the federal government in our lives to do certain things. Not everything that some people want the federal government to do, but in the case of relief for hurricanes, we need. There was a story that came out that Trump didn't want to help, I believe it was Orange County, California, with the wildfires until they told him that people there voted for him.
Two former White House officials said that they had to show voter data to Trump to get him to release disaster relief funding for California wildfire victims. And he released it only after learning he had as many GOP supporters in Orange County as he did in Iowa. They have to treat him like a petulant child and show him. And by the way, how crazy is it that you go, well, if people voted against me, I don't want to help them in wildfires. But that's him. But you have people who are in his circle who are trying to get him, because you end up appalled when you're in that room with him and you realize how he operates. Yeah, they have to show him more people voted for him in Orange County than Iowa for him to actually help people whose fires are encroaching on their very lives and their families' lives. That's who this man is, and that's who some of you are still thinking of voting for. And honestly, shame on you. I mean, you should know better. You should be better. You're more decent than he is. I guarantee it. I don't know you, and I know you're more decent than he is.
We all get hit by, no matter where you are in America, you can get hit by a hurricane, a tornado, heavy storm. I know Minnesota had heavy. I've only been to Minneapolis once, but it was not in the it was not in the winter. We all get hit by weather emergencies that actually are increasing with climate change, and you don't want it to be when it's your roll of the dice that the people in power don't think you are worthy of helping, and because of not even how you, maybe someone else voted. That's not really fair to you. That's not kind of the purpose of America. If we have that kind of existence where we are only going to help certain parts of the country, then we might as well just give up. And so this has come out. This is all public stuff. This is not stuff that Wade and I have just made up or dropped out of thin air. It's available information, and we can't have that. We just can't have a country that we're going to help certain people in problems, not others.
Sarah Longwell, a Republican, not a MAGA Republican, says, I tend not to hold it against average Trump voters that they are duped by the consummate liar and con man, but I very much hold it against political elites who see things like this, and that's referring to the wildfire story and the funding. They absolutely know it's true, and they're still willing to shill for Trump. I think that's well put. And the thing is, it's like, I say shame on you for still voting for Trump if you have the information that we're presenting to you and you believe it. Because if you don't believe it, then just do some research, because what we're saying is true. It's like, it's a lot more reliable and provably accurate than whatever your sources of news are shoveling you. Standard Deviation says, I can't think of a better way to learn how to see through Trump's lies than to study Vince McMahon for 3+ decades. They're not. There's a lot of similarities. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of similarities between them and their personality types. Yeah. What's that, Chris?
It's like good friends. They're good friends.
Yeah, they were phone buddies for a while in recent years. I talked to someone who was in the room when Trump and Vince would talk. And that was, in the lead up to his presidency or during his presidency or both. I can't recall right now, but I've got notes on it somewhere.
Linda McMahon is still part of, I don't know her relationship with Vince, but she still has a relationship with Trump to be involved in his re-election campaign. And, a lot of people here are wrestling fans, obviously. This was a wrestling podcast at one point.
We brought it back to Vince McMahon.
About Vince McMahon. And so, again, I talk a lot about two of my close friends who were involved in Torch, Rich Fan, Justin McClellan. I'm very proud of their friendship of 25 years. And yeah, if you have a close friendship with someone for that long, and it says a lot about you and them. I'll leave it there.
Yes. Very good. All right. We'll wrap up there. People are going to think that was a 2-hour Raw, and they talked like for almost 3 hours. What were they talking about? So there you have it. All right. I might do this again in the next, 3-4 weeks.
Sure. Again, I'm around. I spend a lot of, I actually read about government. Again, I work in government.
Yeah.
I worked in government, state and local level for my entire career. And I read about things like this for my free time. So.
Yep. And at the Wade Keller on Twitter X, if you're just like, hey, I'm curious, I want to try to learn more about this, and don't pay attention to politics. I just thought gas prices were high and eggs were expensive. Eggs were expensive because of a big flu that led to a ton of hens having to be killed. And
the Trump administration stopped actually looking at inspecting the cages properly, which is why the hens died, hence why there were less eggs, hence why the prices
went up. And then they kept the prices up because people got used to it. And now it's Biden and Kamala and eggs. It's so you're just if people are telling you that, they either don't know what they're talking about or they're treating you like marks, and you're you're a victim of a con if you think egg prices. Yes, Kevin, I'm doing a post show after AEW tomorrow night. He has that a couple times, so I'll let him know. Like you can like read about this stuff, and like it's actually not Biden and Kamala's fault that egg prices are high. You know, it's not. It's other things that are under control. And a lot of it is corporate greed. And Chris, you're so right. If, you know, people, oh, I don't want regulations. Well, you know, regulations keep buildings standing that are in the path of hurricanes. You know, there's regulations that keep your house from burning down. Are you dying of CO2 poisoning? And there's inspectors who come out to make sure that your electrician wasn't a quack who wired your home wrong. There's a good reason for regulations. They should be curated and not cumbersome and not outdated. And I talked to an electrician when I had electric work done a few weeks back, and he's like, there's a lot of regulations we have to follow that are antiquated and we should get them off the books. So this is not saying every regulation is perfect, but imperfect regulation is not a blind pass to deregulate everything. There's all kinds of consequences. And the inspections of factory farming eggs, of factory farmed eggs is one of the great examples, Chris, of where deregulation costs lives and costs you a lot of money, you know, because there's a chain effect. This is science. This is what happens. And it's just.
Yeah. And you got to put a quick analogous example here locally in Columbus. A lot of it is like with government. I always tell people, especially people that are younger than me, our interns, is that the role you're in now, you're putting in places things for future generations. And the example I gave to one of our interns a couple of years ago is we passed a flavored tobacco ban in Columbus.
Yep.
And we didn't. She was like, "Oh, we have so many other issues. Why are we focused on this?" And I said, "When I was your age in college, I wouldn't go to the bar. And in Pittsburgh, they didn't change this law for a long time because everyone used to smoke. And
Yep.
I remember being a kid on a plane where you could smoke on a plane and smoke in restaurants. And now, if you talk to a 20-year-old about, oh, I was in a restaurant, everybody was smoking, they look at you like, what are you talking about? That sounds crazy. Why?
Yep.
Because they actually started with someone I'm not a fan of, but Mayor Bloomberg passed a law in New York in 2003. But cities and states passed laws. And so now it sounds crazy or it sounds ridiculous if someone would smoke inside. But that's because people were put in place to make that better for you, a smoke-free environment. So if you were going into a bar in a suit, you would have to get it dry clean like I had to in college. So it's the same thing with this egg example. If you put people in place who are going to care about corporate profits for Purdue or whoever, and are not going to regulate, the health standards, which we need because we don't want to get sick. I mean, when my second daughter was born, we had a formula shortage. Bad time for that. You need people who create standards so these things will get checked, because we'll be the ones who will have the bad effects of that because the government didn't do their job. So you have to think about the process and putting people in place who will make sure those processes are best that they can. No one's perfect, but are looking at things for you that you may not be thinking of because it may not affect you for maybe probably months or years down the line.
That's the thing. There's things that are done that has an effect later, and there's people who are looking out for long-term benefits that might show up when they're not in power anymore, and that's selfless, but it's actual. You know, we say, people are in when they get in government, people think it's all about egos and corruption, but there are people who just want to serve and they really want to do good. I know people at a local level who I'm friends with who they just want to go and do good for their community. But somebody asked earlier, what has Biden done for me? Like, I don't know what his job was before he told us to F off after having a civil discourse over politics that he just happened to disagree with. But since Democrats passed the CHIPS and IRA bills under Biden, manufacturing and spending investment has grown faster than any time in recent history. I mean, it's just shot up in the last few years. Manufacturing's up 279% since Biden took office. And it's a sharp increase in manufacturing in this country. It was a line that was increasing slowly and somewhat inconsistently and was flat during Trump's presidency, but that was COVID. So, but you separate that, it's up sharply because of what Biden did. It's like there are actual real things he did when you tune out Fox News. And that are just things that happened, and there's facts and charts that are real, that MAGA world is going to reflexively say is fake because either there's politicians who are being blackmailed because they have. I truly believe that. I don't get how some of these people, these elites and some senators and stuff, are so desperately just lapdogs for Trump. And I mean, it's like I can't I know it's political survival for some of them, but it just comes across like they're being blackmailed for something they're very embarrassed about, because I can't imagine defaming yourself in such an embarrassing way to people who know better than some of these people do, who still are the few once respected figures who are still supporting Trump in politics.
It's because that, people who have been hounded out have had to resign or leave or not run again. I think the difference between Trump and Biden for the person that emailed in, and I'll say this as a big, huge Democrat. So Trump said something in the 2016 debate that I actually agreed with, and that was the infrastructure of U.S. roads were in poor shape. And I was someone living in New York at the time, and I knew that through my travels, and that we should fix them. And I said, you know what? I don't agree with Donald Trump on many things, but I do agree with him on that. Donald Trump got elected president, and with a Republican Congress, none of those things happened. Joe Biden got elected president, and with a Republican Congress, he was able to vote on the Build Back Better Act. So Donald Trump talked about a problem, and he was right about the problem. He didn't do anything to fix it. And whoever wrote in, I'm sure you live somewhere, because he is all over the country, where the federal government has invested to make your highways and roads better. And that's thanks to Joe Biden. And that's a problem that Donald Trump could have fixed, but instead passed tax cuts for millionaires in 2017, as opposed to fixing those roads. That took place in 2021 under the Joe Biden presidency.
Going back to Mark Zandi, chief economist at economics_MA, economy.com, says, I've hesitated to say this at the risk of sounding hyperbolic, but with last week's big GDP revisions, there's no denying it. This is among the best performing economies in my 35 plus years as an economist. Economic growth is rip-roaring, with real GDP up 3% over the past year. Unemployment is low at near 4%, consistent with full employment. Inflation is fast closing in on the Fed's 2% target. Grocery prices, rent, and gas prices are flat to down over the past more than a year. Households' financial obligations are light and set to get lighter with the Fed cutting rates. House prices have never been higher, and most homeowners have more equity in their homes than ever. Corporate profits are robust, and the stock market is hitting a record high on a seemingly daily basis. Of course, there are blemishes, as lower-income households are struggling financially, and there's a severe shortage of affordable homes, which Kamala led with. That was one of her first big policies to speak about. So she's listening and attentive to what needs to be done now that we see where the state of the economy is. And he goes on, and the government is running large budget deficits. So that's another negative that we want to get past, but you got to get the economy roaring. And then you can fix that with a strong economy. So he says, in my time as an economist, the economy has rarely looked better. And he's been there for 35 years. And it's, nonpartisan take on things. So I just, it's so frustrating when we're on Earth One and there's people who are just insulated from this stuff. Or because I don't think people are bad people who support Trump for the most part. I mean, obviously there's some racists and people who are selfish and people who just want to be part of, rah, red, and we're going to own the libs or whatever nonsense, people do. But it's so frustrating that this is out there and it's like the traditional reporting of facts that in a way that could not be faked. It's just to have Trump and all his people just go fake. Anytime something's bad, they go fake, and then people buy it. He's lied so much. How can you believe anything he says at this point? I mean, I pay really close attention to politics in my spare time when I'm not covering wrestling or, family time with my son. I didn't think Kamala would only be up 3 points right now. I didn't think Biden would be. I thought Biden would by 15. I thought this economy, if you look at all the facts of what the state of the economy and what Biden has done, he should be up 15 points. People should be shedding their support for Trump at this point, for all kinds of reasons, pro-Biden and anti-Trump. It's not just anti-Trump. It's what pro-Democrat is a better way to put it. Chris, pro-democratic policies are winning. They're making a huge positive difference. And just because some hack on some network or self-interested social media poster says it's bad doesn't mean it is, because it's not. It's demonstrably a economy that has come roaring back, and nonpartisan economists say it one after another. I mean, I don't know what to say.
It's not the unfortunate thing. It's not about that for everyone, because again, they're very focused on their one individual situations, and so the economy overall being good, they think that's only for people far away or in a different area. I think a lot of this really is just the discourse. Again, I'm someone who probably the only thing that I've been following more than longer than politics is wrestling. I started watching. I remember wrestling in '85. I started following politics in '88 because '88 was a presidential election. Sports, I'm a big fan. I was after that. I'm the outlier. I realize most people are not like me. They're not reading about the Electoral College. They're not looking at the new Book of Knowledge, 1984, and counting the map. Thank you, Walter Mondale. That was a bad election for him. Sorry, Minnesota. Yeah. But because that's just not how our everyday lives work. We're trying to take care of our families. We're trying to go to work. We're trying to go to school, do all those things. That is why we need to elect people who are going to be truthful with us. And we need to ask people, a lot of it's civics, like how do we teach people about things work and how they react and all those type of things. It's a long-term problem that I think we need to be better in America generally. I mean, I try to do with my own kids, but I only have 2 of them. And I just think that generally misinformation has always been a problem in America. It's in a different form now because of social media and different things, but we've always had people who have said things for their own interest because that's what they care about. Even several Republican senators have said they voted against a border bill that Biden negotiated because Trump wanted to make it an issue for the campaign. So you have to ask people who want to vote for him, is it more important that the money and programming that they could have put in 6-8 months ago, is that more important to affect the problem that you think is important, or for Trump to be elected? Is someone that is willing to hurt our country in the short term for their own personal gain, is that really someone you think you should be voting for?
Yeah,
again, the Republican senators, not me.
The Republicans who, and what I'm trying to think of the senator who spearheaded the immigration bill and worked with Democrats on it, and it was a good bill. It was a massive compromise. Democrats move in one direction, Republicans moving another. Democrats probably moved more because it was in their interest to get something done that they could point to, and Trump knew it, and then had it killed. And that's just a fact. I mean, like you said, you cited people who have said it. I'm trying to think of do you remember the senator's name who spearheaded the whole thing?
Lee?
No, Mike Lee's not. No, he. No, anyway, people can look it up. But he was just appalled that Trump killed it. And the mainstream media is not doing their jobs because they're saying washing Trump. Like Jen Rubin, a Washington Post columnist, Republican, said the mainstream media will not convey how utterly bonkers Trump has gotten, how his lies have magnified it. Will not put in context that this is how authoritarian cult leaders have always behaved. They will not explain how incoherent he has become. Actually, the New York Times just changed this week on that. They came out, finally, they're covering his incoherence and how he's, his mental state seems to be, his competence seems to be diminishing quickly. So that actually has been corrected since she posted this. Actually, this is from September 28th. But she said, they will not explain how incoherent he has become, how his verbal skills have become mush. They will not suggest he is cognitively incapable of doing the job. They think telling the truth is taking sides. And that is such a good line, because I'm not only care about politics, I care about journalism. And the idea that if you tell the truth, you're taking sides, that comes down to the whole thing about the debate where the Republicans with a straight face, Chris, were complaining that Donald Trump got fact-checked more than Kamala, as if there should be equal fact-checking for one person who's lying constantly and Kamala who was not lying constantly. And you can point out a couple statistics. Any political speech you give, you go, well, they said that, but that's painting a greener picture than reality, and they selected with their numbers. Sure, every politician does that. That's not disqualifying. That's what politics is. You curate the best argument you can make from data without being just blatantly dishonest, and that's not lying. It's saying, hey, here's the rosiest numbers I can pick out to make my case. Every politician in every country in all of history and the future is going to do that. What Donald Trump and J.D. Vance did is just lie, because it's all they have. And so to complain that you get fact-checked more than the person who's not lying is ludicrous. But we have mainstream media who are taking the same approach. They're like, well, we have to have one anti-Biden headline for every anti-Trump headline. It's like, actually, no, you don't. You can have someone who's a threat to democracy and free press, who's encouraged violence against media members. That to me is disqualifying. Like the things he said about media members and the vile language he's used about them. I don't like all the media, but I'm for free press, and I don't think violence is the answer to media who are pointing out your lies, and you don't like that they do it. And now the media's nervous to do it. They work, unfortunately, for people. And the New York Times have been a huge disappointment with their headlines, especially more people read headlines and stories. And the sane washing of Trump, it's been a huge discussion in journalism circles, and people who are into media. MediaWatch.org is one of them. Dan Foreman, I can't remember his last name. But yeah, the media's been a big letdown because they don't, they're scared if they go too strong against Trump and he becomes president, what happens to them? So
that's the hard thing for me. It's like, it's like if we talk about the Vikings Jet game and I just say, well, the Jets won.
Yeah.
I know the Vikings had more points, but the Jets had more, third down completions. I don't know if they did, but I'm making that up. So therefore they won, and we just argue about that. It's like, that's not. I wish the Jets had won, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. I think that's really the problem for the coverage, is the fact that people are maybe scared of him, and also the whole issue of both sides. It's like both sides is not. You can say both sides on. We talked about Raw and like, we like this match, and that's fine for both sides. For when people's lives are in danger based on who is the president of the United States. Our livelihood is in trouble. So both sides, and get when one is a clear danger, to me just is so irresponsible.
Yes. And as Sai-T points out in the chat, people don't like being told they're wrong. Admitting it as a weakness and changing their minds is unforgivable. Politics has become like sports allegiances. It is. There's people I like who are rooting for the red team and they're just completely blind to the stakes, which are a lot bigger than college football or a Jets Viking game, or whatever. Like the stakes are too high to just root for a jersey color. By the way, Standard Deviation says, I worked in a lab in the same building as COVID researchers. Shocking ignorance was rife. But I know for a fact that Wade's COVID analysis at the time was on par with actual researchers. Just an FYI. So thank you, Standard Deviation, for noticing that and pointing that out. So anyway. I feel like we signed off a few times and got revved up again, Chris. But we can end there.
It's 1:00 for me. I should probably go.
I think yes. You feel free to cut me off anytime. Any co-host cuts me off if we get rolling. Yeah, it is late. I want you to do your job well tomorrow, not be a zombie.
It's okay.
I'm
working from home in the morning, so I should be all right. I got a meeting in the afternoon, but yeah, I should be good. I've been since I've had 2 kids, I had a lot of coffee, but it was a good conversation.
Yeah. I appreciate.
One of the things for me, again, I have my own kind of viewpoint and my own kind of career. But the thing for me, and again, a lot of it's just since I'm, my wife's from a small rural town in Kentucky, and just her growing up experience was different than mine. I think it's really important. I'm blessed to be able to have conversations with her that a lot of people don't get to have. And I think it's very important that these ideas and thoughts are out for hearing from different people. If you want to tweet at me, Mind of Maitland on Twitter. I still call it Twitter. I'm going to call it Twitter. But yeah, I just think it's really important to get these things out there because they affect all of our lives in different ways. As Americans, if you're not from America, it still also affects you because America's a powerful country, and they can cause trouble in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think it's really important to get this out there, and I'm glad that I could play my part. And hopefully next time we're talking about President Harris and a Wolves-Knicks NBA Finals.
President Harris elect next time. Well, maybe we'll talk before then, Chris, but soon. I'll be genuinely relieved and thankful for everybody, including Trump voters, if she gets elected, because it's going to be a more sane and better world. And I'm honestly scared what's on the other side of this country and world peace and all kinds of things. Humanity. This country's too big and powerful to elect a corrupt, malignant narcissist buffoon who's only interested in himself and discards anyone who doesn't praise him and serve his needs. He's like, his ego was described as like a gas tank with a big hole in it. It just constantly needs to be refed because it's leaking. And every day he needs, there's a lot of people who are experts on his malignant narcissism and have written about him. And he is very clearly has that condition according to experts. And every day he needs his ego fed again, and he will do anything. It is his oxygen to surround himself with people who will affirm what his ego needs to hear. And that does not make a good leader who thinks about other people and the future. And so I don't think you could create someone less qualified to be president than Donald Trump. And at the Wade Keller on Twitter, if you want to read more, because almost every retweet I've done for years is retweeting, I think, things that people should know about what's going on in a very important realm, which is politics. Chris, thanks. Get some sleep. I still got work to do tonight, but we had, we had an extra hour because Raw was an hour short. So we went an hour longer than normal and got politics in instead of a third hour of Raw. So hopefully some people enjoyed it. Our numbers are still great in terms of people listening to us. So we didn't drive everyone away.
Sounds good. Again, you can hear me on Wrestling Coast to Coast with my good friend Justin McClelland. We probably won't talk about politics, but I will make fun of referees making bad decisions.
Yes, very good. There it is. Search PWTorch in your podcast app and subscribe to a different show each day of the week, different shows on the Daily Cast lineup, different topics. It's a really fun mix of shows. Hope you'll check it out. I hope everybody in the path who has been affected by the hurricanes or is in the path of the next one, which sounds scary, is safe, and you're in our thoughts, and we wish you well. Javier, I know, is having to take this week off from watching wrestling to prepare himself and stay safe. And I know a lot of you maybe listening to this are in the same position, maybe in a long car ride out of town. But you're in our thoughts, and we hope everything goes well. And Governor DeSantis, take Kamala's phone call next time she calls. All right.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to y'all.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Yep.
Have a good night.
Thanks. Yep. And if you're so inclined, go VIP, and I'll throw that graphic on the screen as we sign off here. And there it is. There we go. Thanks, everybody.